Getting how well it does.
Settled.
Who are we missing?
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Henshaw. We'll let you. Okay.
Tell him that.
Great. All right. We'll go ahead and call our September 28th Town Council work session agenda to order. We can have a roll call, please.
Morris, Councilwoman
Edwards.
Edwards. I thought there's no nameplate, so I was
It's a quiz. It's a quiz.
Councilman Woods.
Present.
Mayor Lee.
Here.
Councilman Cottle.
Here.
Councilman Passanello.
Present.
Councilman Vice Mayor Aiken.
Here.
I'm a rookie over here.
That's okay.
I've only closed out meetings. I've never started, so.
Not a problem at all. Okay. Our first item is we should had some adjusted amendments. I think they were sent out today. We had the May 21st meeting minutes that were added to the packet. It should be on our dais here, I believe,
Yes, they
or actually included in the packet.
We didn't get a chance, it's kind of a court minute track, and so we couldn't add them. They will be added for the regular meeting on Thursday.
Okay, great.
Can I make just one quick correction to the police search committee? I was not present. Not at the first meeting, no.
Yeah, that was one of my catches there. Okay. Other than that, then we added our other minutes that we had taken off from our last meeting inside there. We want to welcome Supervisor Camlin to tonight's, and maybe we can get an update and just tell us what the state of the Prince William County Union's doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Council members, thank you for the opportunity to come and provide a quick update on what's going on in the county and to answer any questions that you might have. First of all, I'm happy to announce that the improved speed of the Camlin for Supervisor float at the Haymarket Days. We're very happy about that. We had some misunderstandings the year before, going a little too slow, but we kept at a good pace this year. So that was good. As far as updates from the county, I thought I'd just go through a few of the capital improvement projects that we've got going on, and then some of the transportation updates and some of the other issues that we're working on. First of all, we are very excited to have the library ribbon cutting being held on October 22nd at 10 a.m. This has been a project that has been in the works for years, almost a decade, when it was voted on in the 2006 bond referendum. We are very excited to have the Haymarket Gainesville Community Library open October 22nd. So let me officially extend an invitation to all council members to attend that event. It should be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of members of the community. We're bringing the school over. They're going to be involved, and it should be a tremendous occasion. And we'll provide additional details. My office will provide additional details. As far as some of the transportation projects, as you can see, we are just finishing up VDOT is finishing up the final details of the 6629 Linton Hall interchange. For those of you who drive through there on a regular basis, it is a tremendous improvement over what we had at one point. We were very excited that was able to be completed. We completed it in time for the Tiger Woods golf tournament over at Robert Trent Jones. It was also very successful for Prince William County, Haymarket, Gainesville area. They have started construction. You've obviously seen the widening of 66 from 29 to 215. That is expected to be completed by August of 2016. They've also started, well, they started several months ago, but they're going to be starting more in earnest the redesign of the 6615 interchange. And that's expected to be completed in fall of 2017. As you guys know, it's going to be the divergent diamond layout, and so that should be moving along here pretty soon. Also, in talking to VDOT, and maybe you've heard the same, they're hoping for a completion date of the Old Carolina Bridge, maybe even sometime this year. They're trying to accelerate that project. If I were a betting man, I'd still say sometime next year, but it'll be a good surprise for all of us if they're able to bring it in closer this year, or into this year. Looking at some of the other projects that we're dealing with, Haymarket Crossing, which is the apartments that are planning on being built across from the hospital. The applicant has come back with a new proposal to change those apartments to townhomes. And they're looking to go from about 300 apartments down to 200 townhomes. That passed the Planning Commission, and that'll be coming before the Board of County Supervisors here in the upcoming weeks. We're expecting about the same density as it was before, so we pretty much be a wash as far as the number of students goes, number of people, just because you're going from more less dense units to more dense units. If that makes sense. So we're expecting it to be somewhat of a wash with that. Also, the St. Catherine Drexel Parish and School SUP, what came before the Planning Commission, that is going to be on the corner of 15 and Waterfall Road. That passed the Planning Commission, and it'll be coming before the Board of County Supervisors on October 12th. Looking at some of the other, no update to provide on the Dominion power lines. I have not heard anything else beyond, I think, what you all have heard. We're still on a holding pattern. It has not been submitted to the SCC at this point, and we continue to talk to our state representation to try and push forward the burying of the power lines along Route 66. I do know that Congresswoman Comstock's office is getting involved in this, working with the Federal Transportation Administration to, again, try to push the undergrounding of the lines along 66. The Board of County Supervisors is currently looking and discussing the location of the 13th high school. As many of you know, Battlefield High School is vastly overcrowded, and so is Patriot High School over there in Bristow. And so we are looking for the location of the 13th high school. We've narrowed it down to really two potential possibilities. One associated with the Stonehaven development, which is about 1,000 homes behind the Jiffy Lube Live facility. The developer is planning on proffering a good amount of property for us to build the high school. The other one that we're looking at is the Rollins Ford Park site off of Rollins Ford Road. It's about 60-some, almost 70 acres there. It's currently scheduled to have a park built on it, yet the board is looking to see if there's a possibility of moving that park to another piece of county-owned property and then potentially building the 13th high school there. That is, I think, the number one priority as far as the Board of County Supervisors and the school board working together is to find that site for the 13th high school because, again, as we know, both those high schools are extremely overcrowded. I think that is about all of the updates I have for all of you. I'm just seeing if Log Mill Road. I guess the last two more updates. Log Mill Road project has been started, where they're going to be flattening parts of Log Mill Road. That's going to close down that road for, unfortunately, almost a year.
Wow.
They are going to leave a lane open for emergency vehicles, but then they're going to be directing traffic down Mountain Road to Waterfall, or maybe up going out to New Road coming out onto Route 15. So that's going to be a big inconvenience for a lot of folks. This project was approved probably 7 years ago. They used federal dollars, a good amount of federal dollars to get this done, and we're just now getting to the point of that actually happening. A lot of work trying to get people's property, and frankly, I think it should take that long to take people's property, but they're looking at about a year for completion. And then also the Bi-County Parkway is another issue that has come up recently. The NVTA, it looks like they're going to not put the Bi-County Parkway on their list of priority projects to fund, which is a good news for those of us who think that the Bi-County Parkway would be a little bit of a detriment to the quality of life that we have out here in Prince William County. And that is just a 2-year commitment that they're not going to fund that in 2017. They can come back and revisit that and see if it's a priority. I have asked the Board of County Supervisors to write a letter to the CTB to recommend that we remove the designation of the corridor of statewide significance from that area. If that designation gets removed, then that becomes very difficult for VDOT to build that Bi-County Parkway. So still some moving parts, still some updates that we're hoping to provide here in the upcoming months. That is all I have for you. If there's anything that the board or the council would like to know, I'd open myself up for any questions.
We'll go around.
This is great. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Always love to see you. Anything on John Marshall Commons? Anything new?
As of right now, it has been deferred. It did not pass the Planning Commission, and it's really deferred to date uncertain. I know the Planning Commission had some concerns on how it conformed with the general planning of that area. And so I think the applicant is still meeting with my planning commissioner and still having discussions on how they could bring that back before the Planning Commission again. So as of right now, it has been deferred. I don't think there's been a date that has been set to discuss that.
Yes, and I just wanted to say publicly, thanks for sponsoring the blood cancer awareness again this year, 3rd year in a row. I just wanted you guys to know, and Diana, thank you for all your work on that as well.
Well, thank you for your work on that.
Yeah. We had a really successful bike ride yesterday up in Montgomery County, and I was thinking, if we were running with Pete, maybe we could do something here in Prince William County. So I'd like to explore that in the future.
We'll do biking with Pete next year.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks again for coming. This is very helpful. Only question I have, I've had a couple citizens ask about the Cabela's, where they're at in that development. Have you heard anything?
I have not, and I apologize not having specifics. That's in the Brentsville district, and so I don't have the latest, but I can get the town council the latest information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Stonehaven.
So yes, the applicant has basically repackaged the Stonehaven project. It was about 1,600 homes. Now they've come back with a proposal of about 1,000 homes. It is a smaller footprint than it was before, but it still proffers the high school site, still proffers a bunch of parks. It has not been scheduled for any date at this point, but I would expect very soon that would most likely anywhere between November and January come up to the Planning Commission and the Board of County Supervisors again.
Okay, great. Okay. Councilman Woods?
No questions? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
No questions.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Pete. We really appreciate you
Thank
taking
you
your
very
time
much. Appreciate it.
to give us an update here.
Absolutely.
All
Thanks a
right.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Okay, our next is our town center master plan, conceptual layout.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's just cruel.
I think we might want to switch up to where we have our staff that's presently here. Yeah, okay, yeah, great. All right, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
This one.
Chris isn't here, we'll steal his.
Oh, yeah.
Jump into it? Okay. First, I probably should just introduce myself. My name is John Hiltzel, architect. I'm working with the town to develop the renovation of the building. I have been working with Brian and the staff over the past month or so. First, I want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the council for the opportunity. I do recognize how important this project is. architecturally. I know it's important in a lot of respects, but I really appreciate the importance of the building design, and I appreciate the opportunity to work on it. I'm optimistic that we'll come together on a successful design on a functional and architectural level as well. Unless Brian objects, I'll jump into a brief overview of the project and a little bit about the design and the process and the progress as well. Point out a few things, and then if you feel it's appropriate, we can drill down into a little more detail. But as I mentioned before, I've met with Brian and a number of the staff members on a handful of occasions to get a good feel for what the functional requirements are. From there, I developed basically a written program that says, here's all our objectives, here are our space requirements, this is what we're trying to accomplish in this project. I use that as a vehicle to then start to develop an actual design. Early on in the design process, I did recognize that there's a lot of things, like many projects, there's a lot of things that we hope to accomplish space-wise, but maybe we can't pack it all in. So part of my job has been to try to weed through that, sort through what the critical things are and what may not make it, what gets left on the editing floor, and help make those more critical decisions. But I think in general, a lot of things we're having to cut a little bit. We also discussed exploring the possibility of utilizing maybe more space upstairs, either now or in the future. So, with that, the design itself, basically, we are proposing to utilize the entire main level, and then I'm proposing a small addition on the back of the building, which is basically right there in that corner, for basic vertical transportation, getting up and down upstairs. So we need, because of the scale of the project, there are certain things in the code that says we have to do while we're at it. So we another staircase, an elevator for convenience, but also for ADA compliance. But that area makes the most sense to house all those things. And the other advantage to putting an addition out here is it's going to provide a convenient and aesthetic access to the building from the new parking area. So with that, basically developing a central core area, it conveniently lines up on axis with the existing front doors of not these, of course, but the other ones. And then if you look at the plan in sort of that pink salmon color, you'll notice there's a lobby, sort of like you would have in any office building or your doctor's office building. You have a central lobby area, and it goes on axis straight out into the parking lot. In the back, we'll also have to introduce some walkways and a ramp and steps to get you up to the parking lot level back there. As you know, if you walked out, well, it's that door there. You know, it's a kind of an odd setup where you go up a couple steps. So we're gonna wrestle with that on the outside of the building as you get up into the parking lot. So that the idea of this central lobby core area is to provide main access from both parking lots, convenient to get into the building, and then you go where you want to go. You can go to town hall, you can go to the police department, you can go to the chambers, you can go to the restrooms, you can get into the elevator to get upstairs. So it's the hub of the building, so to speak. We're proposing to then reorient the bathrooms. We need to work on their ADA compliance and update them. From that core area, it basically breaks off into those three primary areas: so town hall in blue, the police department in purple. And sorry, Eric, that was supposed to be the other way around. We're supposed to do blue on that side.
That's right. Yeah.
Fouled that up, and next time I'll get it right. And the chambers is the yellow area. We can discuss in more detail the actual layout of these offices. If you'd like, I will just point out basically this area, since it makes sense. Structurally, the way this building was built over a series of periods, there's some funny structural things going on here, so we're going to contend with it. Basically, we're keeping in this general area. I'm proposing that we take out these side chambers, widen it, but I am shortening up just a little bit. It doesn't go all the way to the front of the building. We need to get some more office space for town hall offices. But in the end, I believe it'll be a little more functional, a little better seating. The main thing is by getting this width here that we can get some monitors to the sides of the dais. What is drafted here, the scale is still the same dais. Maybe it changes, but it's scale-wise, it's the same thing, but we've got more room to each side to get these monitors in. We'll still have a small ramp. I'm actually proposing to get rid of that door. I'm going to move it all the way over to the corner here at the chamber level, so you go right out to the parking lot, but not in the back, out of the back corner. Big picture. Finally, is it important to get into any of the detail of the specific office layouts, or is that?
I would defer to council. Just iterative process, nothing set in stone.
Yep. Vice Mayor.
Is there any thought going into a phased approach? What could be done at one period of time, and then a delay in what could be done at another period of time that would not be a significant additional cost? That may or may not be possible, but I'm just wondering, has any thought been going into that, or anybody asked about that?
There's been discussion about it, and it's been specifically phase one being everything on the first floor, and then possibly going up. I don't think we've had discussions about from left to right, right to left, but let's get everything done, the addition and everything on it as shown, and then potentially go up. Does that sound about right?
I think that would be the fair synopsis. As of right now, really what we're trying to do is get the general layout, and then at that point, that sets him forward to start actually doing the actual architectural plans. And during that time would be the appropriate time for us to discuss how are we going to phase this in as to like try to get the PD section that's unfinished right now, do that first, and then how are we all going to shift it around and move? I think you all would have
I'm less concerned about shifting around and finance, where somebody lives. I'm talking about financially.
Right.
If this is a $1 million project and we have $500,000 to start with, can we do enough? And I'm not asking about money just yet. If I'm just saying, is there a way of phasing this that maybe we do part of it and several years later then go to the next phase? Is that even possible? Would it make sense? Would it be exorbitantly expensive to do that, as far as obviously doing it all at once is cheaper than breaking it up in pieces? The second part of that question is, should turn that on. The second part of that question is, would the elevator be something that could be phased? As far as the ADA requirements go, depending on how the upstairs is used, is that something that could be a possible phase two, that we get the entire downstairs done, and then potentially at some future time bring in the elevator and that to service the upstairs? Again, don't know the rules or the regulations and that, but just something I'm throwing out is the elevator, I know, is going to be a fairly expensive individual piece.
So, there hasn't been a lot of discussion about phasing yet, other than maybe up. It is possible. I haven't been tasked with that concept yet.
Okay.
I'm sure that we could, if we got to that point. It's certainly better to anticipate getting to that point now, so that as I design it even schematically, I know where those parts start to fall off. So it is possible. And as you said, as you do that, it does become expensive. Every time you restart, there's, I would say, 25% waste factor in stopping and starting. Engine need, engine engineers, mobilization, permits,
Right.
so there's that factor. As far as the elevator itself, breaking that out, that, I might even go further and say the elevator and a new stairwell and some other stuff back here, that's a kind of a package deal. I think about it. Maybe it's a shaft and no elevator, maybe, but the general answer is that the elevator, I'm trying to put this in a way that's brief but accurate, the way the code works. And in general, the code says, number one, is your building ADA compliant throughout? And our answer is no. So then it says, number two, as you make improvements to your building, you need to keep setting aside an amount of money to make it such. And so it depends. It depends on what that phase one is. We may be able to scale back phase one if there is going to be a thing like that. But phase one is a certain amount of work, and we only have to spend a certain amount of money, and putting an elevator would exceed that. So now we stop somewhere else. We do the bathrooms, we do the front doors, we do door hardware, we do parking lot improvement, we do other things to get that number. Thank you. So, there's a time when that elevator will have to happen. I don't know if it has to happen just by virtue of this, and I sense that it does, because the factor is 20%. So I think we would have I would have a difficult time getting the numbers to work to say we're doing all this work, and yet we don't have enough money in 20% of our budget to meet those. With that, there may be a possibility that if I'm tasked with this phase concept, that we continue to phase it even smaller. So now it's maybe half of this and no exterior, that the outside stays the same for now, and that wouldn't be enough to trigger that. But my guess is we do the whole entire first floor and some exterior renovations. We can't spend 20% just in bathrooms. We've got to go somewhere else, and that is going to be, in the pecking order of the code, that's the next thing, is get people upstairs.
Okay. I mean, all this will obviously be worked out in the near future.
Right.
I just want to plant the seed now that at least I'm interested in seeing if there is a phased way of doing this in order to limit the expenses on any given year or 2-year period to keep moving forward and not just have a huge bill up front.
Right. I think that's a valid point, and I would say that if you're considering that, I would urge you to think about the phasing approach, what is important. So phasing in money is easy. If we spend this much and this much and this much, but what do you get for that money? Is it purely functional aspects on the lower level? Does it need to be more exterior? We need to do something visually. Is that a priority? That core area with an elevator, maybe that's important because it allows you to get the rest of your offices up in the near future, or maybe rent it so there's income. I don't know what those factors are, but it's money is only half of it. It's what do we need in that pecking order as well.
Okay. I'll let somebody else talk.
There you go.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm still thinking.
Okay. You else would like to?
I just have basic comments. I mean, just from the way the design is, if you're moving the door, you can't really leave. I mean, there are certain things that have to come first. Am I right?
Yes.
So if you're completely changing, it would be hard to phase, do that side of work, but yet leave this door open. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right. I think if you look at it, you'd almost have to commit to this area in one side or this area, the whole first floor, no outside, no elevator, something like that.
I'm really encouraged. I think this looks great. I think you're hitting on all the the aspects of it, to be able to separate the two, that common walk-in area, and the fact that it would go all the way through the back, I can envision this. This looks really great. The only thing I didn't see prospectively, what is our current police department, how that affects this footprint here. It looks like over to the right, I would assume that's the Hall Fish House over would be your top right. But
You don't see the building, yeah.
yeah, but up in the top left, how much into that parking is that actual other home that's behind us?
The structure.
Yes,
here.
correct. Is that anywhere, does that cut into any of your map right
Does that
there?
assume-
No, I think that's completely off this board. I'm going to,
Oh, okay.
yes, it's up in this corner here.
So that doesn't assume, this doesn't assume that it goes away?
It doesn't necessitate removing this building, but it's assuming that the core function of that building is moved over here and
Right.
it's vacated.
Right. Got it.
Mr. Mayor, the site plan, this all is contained within the existing footprint of the building, except for the addition in the back, which would not encroach into the site planning. And so the parking spaces and other elements that you see are a part of the master plan, which keeps both houses and also keeps the existing PD.
Gotcha, okay.
The only change that Holly and I were discussing, and I apologize if we were rude, was the main entrance now may require us to do a little bit of adjustments to the site plan. If you see on your rendering, you do have some dedicated space in front with the hatched area where parking is. But that's an easy thing to address with the site planning process. So I kind of look at that, to your earlier question about phasing, I guess what I would see is you have the horizontal, the site as part of one phase, the interior renovation, and then the third would be the exterior renovation of the buildings, perhaps.
And we're still looking at circular parking as, it looks like the way we have them diagonal in the north of the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How many parking spaces does this show?
I knew you were going to ask me that when I walked up to the table. I want to say right around 60,
And how many do we have now?
almost 80.
Okay.
But I can, while you're finishing your discussion, I can go grab it.
I guess one of my concerns is looking at the number of parking spaces nearest to the very thing for her. Does not appear to be very many at all. So I'm wondering about the impact on that business.
Or is it going to be shared?
Well, again, separate, I guess in this instance, perhaps, John, we never met on Marchant. Nice to meet you. Dedicated spaces for the PD, if that's going to be the primary entrance and focus for the police department, like the secondary entrance. And then the front would be opened up to public services, people coming in, getting their permits, coming to council meetings. So it almost by default segregates or separates the two different functions of the building.
Mr. Mayor, can I answer a few questions? Hey, John, this looks great. I like the interior. I, too, agree with Steve about the phasing of it. It's almost like you want to have a menu and come up with a couple of different options. One of the things I'm curious about is, as you would know, function doesn't follow form. It's the other way around, right?
Right.
And so I'm just wondering about the criteria. I'd be curious to see some of that stuff, Brian, understanding what the needs are first and how that ties into your design, and whether there is some wiggle room here to make some adjustments to that. The other thing is the exterior, and you said it yourself. That's going to be the competing priority, I think. Not sure, but perhaps it will be, because we really want to get out there and make this the central hub of the town, right? So I haven't seen any renderings. Well, maybe we've seen some in the past, some conceptuals, but are you going to be working on that as well?
Yes, and I've already started that process. However, we've decided, once I started doing some research, history, and of the town, and also digging into some of the ARB guidelines and previous proposals, I took a step back, talked to Brian, and we said, you know what we need to do? We need to engage the ARB before I get any further. If you're willing. Because there are two, in my opinion, two distinctive directions this project could go. And so it would be a good idea to get input and buy-in from ARB before I just take off and then try to sell you on something.
Good
point. Yeah.
And we do anticipate taking that to the ARB this month,
Okay, good.
so there would be some
Motion.
catch-up.
I'd rather have.
Okay. Other questions?
Going back to what you said earlier about phasing in your area of expertise, when you phase something like this, let's say just conceptually, you phased half of it, you did the first floor in 2 phases. You said something about 25% more costs associated with the phasing. So really, as a council, then, we need to look at today's dollars versus tomorrow's dollars, where
That's right.
it may be, I'm not saying it is, but I'm just thinking out loud with your opinion. Might be easier to see if we can't do the whole thing, if we could afford it, obviously. But is that a pretty standard start and stop, 25%?
I use that as a rough rule of thumb, maybe 20%. 25% is a scare factor. I'm trying to send a signal. It's not a great idea. And the same, my response to that is just like any project. It never really makes financial sense to do that. It happens because you're tapped out of the ability to do it financially. So if you have to stop somewhere, you have to stop somewhere. But if you were to map it over financially, considering all the factors of interest and even the economy changing and all, it doesn't make sense. And it will cost more to phase no matter what. So it's not a great idea, but sometimes it's the only option.
All right, and then the last question, you may not be at a point where you can answer this. Let's suppose we did it all at one time. Project like this, start to finish, as it's laid out here, how long would it take?
Are you just assuming the inside? Or
Just the inside, just what we have right, because I've never seen the outside, it sounds like that. I'm talking about just this layout. If we did just go with this layout, what's the turnaround time?
I think this layout proposes an addition to the building. If somehow we manage to design it so it's phased, so it's only the interior of the layout, no addition, no exterior renovation, it drops down to a construction period of 4 to 5 months.
Okay,
It's a typical tenant, no, I shouldn't say typical, it's pretty invasive. But yeah, it could be done in a 4 or 5 month period of time. Putting a physical addition on and changing the exterior, it doubled it.
right, but, and even when we talk phase, the current office staff wouldn't have to vacate this building, you would work around them, or would they have to go off-site? See, when you talk phase, you know, are we just gonna come in and just clear the building where they would be temporarily located because the government has to stay open?
That level of phasing, sort of micro phasing within the first
Right.
phase, that would be something that, and really, we'd probably bring in a construction manager or a contractor to discuss it, how we can stage, as it maybe not phase, but it's actually
Right.
staging, and how to do that. That also does add time and money, not to the magnitude that we're talking about in phasing it, but I'm probably speaking maybe beyond my expertise, because that is a construction-related question, but I would guess it adds 2 more months to the process, and maybe a 10 to 15% cost increase by taking it in smaller bites and shifting people around.
So really, and I'll stop with this, we don't only have the cost of this physical construction, we have other costs associated with temporary housing of people, moving things around. So when we do financially plan for this, we have to kind of have some cost overruns, if you will, to move these folks around.
To move them out and move them back in.
Correct.
Yes, and my
Okay.
experience has been sometimes it's a wash. Move them out and rent someplace, or move them up, or whatever, and get it done quickly as opposed to breaking it into 3 parts. In the end, it's probably, it may be similar.
Well, we own enough property. I don't think renting something would be an issue. We own too much, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Sure. If I can follow up on a question by Mr. Aiken. Councilman Aiken, I had the numbers reversed. We have 53 is existing, and with the current plan proposed, we'd have 75, so it'd actually be a net increase.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
Other questions? Yeah, that is a positive, the fact that we do have the building behind us that we can share.
There's also the possibility of completing the police department area and then moving admin into it while we renovate admin and moving them back. That might even be a simpler option, but that's to be determined.
It looks like we really probably have the 2/3 of this vacant as it stands right now. We're actually operating over just on the yellow and the blue almost. Yeah, currently. So if you did go from a phased or staged approach.
The biggest thing that we would lose would be the council chambers to have meetings, so that would be our only issue as to where we would.
Go back to the old museum.
Oh, how many times I
I was
sat
just
on those
thinking that.
benches.
Yeah, exactly.
so how many spaces are we talking about for the renovation for meetings, for the public? I can't read, it's too small for my eyesight.
How many, seats?
Yeah.
I started out at 40, and I think the last pass I picked up about another 10, so about 50.
And that includes, I guess, that seating in the rear there. It looks
Yes.
like against the wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Oh, great. So your next step is AirB.
Correct.
You meet with them at their very next meeting.
Yes,
And then
and
put together-
continue to refine the interior layout for staff. We still have another pass or two to tweak
More than we
the
have now.
spaces.
Okay. All right.
One quick question. When you mentioned this, it brought up the question, if we do everything, infrastructure, parking lot, facade, elevator, entire inside, not the upstairs, we talking about closer to 2 years? You were saying 5 to 6 months for just the interior with no elevator or anything. I'm just wondering, if we do the entire thing,
The building itself would be pushing a year-long process. I can't speak to the scheduling on the site because I'm not familiar enough with
Okay.
the what kind of storm water work and things like that. Maybe it could be another 4 I would guess 4 or 5 months of site work that could possibly concurrently, or get that done first and then come in and do the building.
we could be talking 12 to 18 months.
For everything.
And that's with a vacant building, like everybody moves out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You do have
Well-
the vacant portion, so.
They get
But
started.
if you're moving doors and windows and kind of,
And the idea of shifting people and let's keep operating here and then work here and then move. And I'm relating to the building. Now we get to the site. I wish there was a civil engineer in the room. Maybe there is, but somebody could talk about that on the site because again, I don't even know how practical that is. I'm not sure the magnitude of the stormwater changes and things like that. So can that even be done, half the site and then another half? We need to chase everybody off the parking lot as well. I don't know.
Okay.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.
Marshawn, do we have another footprint that shows the entire layout? Oh, like that? Our site plan. Yeah, the site plan, I'm sorry.
Yes, I can print you, I have a large scale, but I can print off a smaller one.
That shows all the property from corners to corners.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would you like me to print off a copy? Or?
Oh, no, at some point, it doesn't have to be right now, but definitely would like to see how it looks for the overall. Any other comments, Marshawn?
Brian, can I, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
How many tenants do we have upstairs?
2, 3.
Business-wise, you have 3 businesses.
Okay.
Total number up in XTS, I'm not exactly sure how many they have there. The other two are very small, they only have two, three each.
Going to be very disruptive to them. That's why I'm just.
Okay. All right. Next item, so I think we'll switch things around here to let our staff to, we want to maybe speak to our engineers report. Maybe we'll go first here.
I also have a agenda item, just to let you know as well. Okay, so on page 31 is the engineer's report. Not much change with the enhancement project. I know, as I mentioned previously to you, our attorney has been reaching out to the Finley attorney, and that's kind of where we're at with that right now. One of the things I'm going to be working on is over the next month with the town attorney is to formulate a resolution of support. Prince William County is going to be applying for federal funding to design and construct a bridge over the railroad tracks over here on 15, and it would help their funding application if they have a resolution of support from the town. So I will get that. That will be presented at the November meeting. They need it by December 1st. Also, I'm calling to your attention the Transform 66 outside the Beltway Hot Lanes public meetings. There is an opportunity to watch a live stream as well. That's in my notes. I printed out some additional information for you guys as well. This is excerpts from the CTV presentation made, I think, earlier this month. The preferred and what this meeting is to go over the preferred alternatives and timing of the different phases. The preferred alternative is going to take up to Gainesville. It's going to take what you have now, the 4 current lanes that you have where the one becomes the HOV lane. It's going to take out that HOV lane and make it into a separated hot lane and add another hot lane. So you're going to have 2 hot lanes, 3 general purpose lanes.
Are they going to be toll lanes?
Yes, they're going to be it's going to be the HOV3, so there'll be the flex pass, and it'll become HOV3 as
And
well.
that's going to be
The
variable
bottom line is we
pricing.
lose a lane to people who are not paying tolls.
Exactly. It's going to go down because right now what you have currently with the configuration is the 4th lane, the HOV lane becomes general purpose except for during rush hour. And it's going to be horrible. But no. But actually, and I gave you here, they're also planning transit improvements. And I do want to say, I know that they're talking, they're supposed to be bringing commuter bus transit out here to Haymarket, and then improvements at other intersections. And then on the last page is what I really kind of wanted to call your attention to, and I highlighted a portion for you. The hot lanes in Phase 1, which is what they're supposed to be trying to have done by 2021, will only extend to Gainesville, University Boulevard. Then what's going to happen is the from Gainesville and then these new widening lanes they're constructing, that's going to remain as we're used to seeing it with the 4th lane that's just the HOV during traffic hours. Well, I'm actually kind of glad they did that because I was very concerned that here they are widening 66, and then I was worried within the next 5 years they were going to tear out one of these lanes and redo it. So the fact that they're stopping it means that actually even the widening that they did within the past 10 years out to Gainesville and then Gainesville to Haymarket, it's not going to be just ripped out immediately. And it's also good, I think, for our citizens that are going through all this construction right now between the bridge and 66, that it means that they're not going to immediately turn around and then have construction again for another several years.
Back to the bridge over railroad tracks. Is Prince William County, and do you know if Prince William County is applying for the funding to have 2 lanes each way over the bridge, over the railroad tracks, or just the 2 lanes now? Because on the other side, they've got the 4 lanes that are opening up.
I don't know specifically, but I would assume logically it's for a 4-lane, and same thing to account for extra tracks on the railroad as well.
Yeah.
Just because it's so early in the process, I haven't seen their proposal, I have not, so I wasn't even going to go into that kind of detail, but logically, it would be the 4-lane section that's going to finish, we're going to stop it on our side with or VDOT's going to stop it on our side, and then you've got that gap, so.
Right.
I would assume, I just assumed it was for the 4-lane section.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Looking at this map, this transit elements, you may or may not know the answer, but I just thought I would mention it. Where does the VRE fit into this, the mass transportation? It would seem to me if they're going to take an extra lane, we're going to bottleneck the people that live out here. There's a big project going in up at Marshall's, my understanding, a couple thousand homes up around 17. So and then you got all the Front Royal traffic, and then we're going to get to Gainesville, and it's going to be a fiasco. So my question being, how important is getting the VRE out to Haymarket, mass transit, where I know it's pretty certain it's coming to Gainesville, at least is what I've heard. It's this last little leg to Haymarket.
I haven't heard anything further since VRE came and presented to the council, where they talked about they were in the study to extend it out to Haymarket. That VRE has been attending these meetings, but that extension is not part of the Transform 66 project.
Right, but I'm just saying, I would think that would be something as a council we'd really want to reconnect with VRE, because I don't really see the widening really helping unless the people are paying money. I actually think it's going to hurt us more than help us.
I have some of those concerns as well, because you're getting I know that if I'm not in town in the mornings, I come in from the Fairfax area. I like to try and get here before 3, because that's when HOV westbound kicks in. And you can tell the difference. You can immediately tell it. So I have my concerns as well.
We talk a lot about the quality of life out here as it relates to the power lines, which obviously I want them underground, but I think this is a close second.
Well, and the thing is that while it does affect you guys, it affects the town, the fact that they're doing the hot lanes out to Gainesville, the good news is that at least like I said, from Gainesville to the town, until they do a second phase, you will have all 4 lanes available. So if it does do any bottlenecking, it's like you said, it'll be in Gainesville, and hopefully not all, because I can see the difference. Once everybody dumps out on Gainesville right now, it does clear up a lot. Even though it's down to just 2 lanes right now.
But it would be
you'll have 4. You'll have 4.
It would be like it was about 10 years ago when you could get to Manassas and you couldn't get out here. So it's we're going to go back 10 years in time. I vividly remember that.
Well, I will say that there is a second phase that will extend the hot lanes out to Antioch Road Bridge, and that's where they're proposing, I think, putting the park and ride as well. I just don't know that phase has been funded or programmed yet.
Okay.
That's part of what these public meetings are about. If you go to the Transform 66 website, it's transform66.org, there's a 15-minute video that shows the presentation that was given to the CTB earlier this month. And if you're interested in just our section, it's at the end of the 15 minutes. They are hoping, I understand, one of the things that they're hoping that is going to alleviate the fact that you're losing a through lane is the introduction of some of the transit, the buses. From Gainesville inwards, they are proposing both commuter buses and the rapid transit buses. Out to Haymarket, they're just proposing commuter buses. So I think that what they're hoping is that more people will use that transit as an option as well if it's provided to them. And that will help alleviate the people that do not want to pay the tolls or don't have the 3 people to ride in their vehicles. So it's everything together that they're looking at in this. That's why they included the transit is included as a part of this 66 project, because of the fact that you're losing a lane during some of the times. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I just have my concerns as well. I'm being honest with you about the fact that taking away that general purpose lane during all hours, it concerns me as well. I have questions in my head. I do not know if enough people will take mass transit, and 66 isn't going to bottleneck all the way through. But it's a fact that it's coming. People said the same thing about 95, like what happened with 95. Imagine what happened with 95 is going to happen here. It's the same model. Do something about it.
I'm done.
Okay, I don't know if I answered your. I'm trying
To
to
answer my question, it's going to be Dr. Gridlock.
Well, and I'm not trying to be
I mean, it's not-
Debbie Downer. I'm trying to give you what I think is my honest opinion. I have concerns. It's
and
reality.
I'm looking at it from sitting behind the driver's seat as a driver's ed
I
instructor. It's
I
going
do
to be
too.
gridlock.
And that's why there's a nickname that they're the Lexus lanes. People that can afford it, because the hot lanes you're supposed to guarantee 40 miles per hour on the hot lanes.
Right.
And so the people that don't have HO3 can pay, and that's why they're not. I don't want. I don't want to pay that money, so I'm stuck in the general traffic too. And the people that have enough money to pay that on a regular basis can do that. So that's why they're nicknamed the Lexus lanes. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I'm trying to be realistic to you.
Right.
I think we should go to that presentation that they're doing at Piney Branch, and I forgot the date. It's not
It is in my report.
October something. October 21st? I think we'll get a lot more detail if we go to that.
Absolutely. This is just what it was, like I said, it was a 15-minute video to cover the entire stretch from the Beltway to here. So I definitely do not have all I just wanted to kind of give you an update of this is the first news that I'd heard it wasn't extending all the way out to Haymarket in the first phase. And so I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that as well. Right. They swear by the traffic modeling it will work. I will say that. I don't want to. They swear that by the traffic modeling this will work. And so all I can do, I did not model the traffic. I'm actually not a traffic engineer, but as a driver, like you, I have my concerns.
I guess they'll have the modelers there for the meeting.
I don't know if they will at this stage, to be honest. I really don't know if they will do that. I mean, that has been an important part of this project, figuring everything out. I just can't answer that question if they will or not.
Well, I think, Matt, you make a good point about VRE, and all the more reason why we should reach out and continue to work with them, because in my view and my experience in the industry, you need options.
Well, and that is the goal. They have been coming to all of these meetings as well, and they've been an integral part, of a stakeholder. And that's why I think they're initiating part of the extension out to Haymarket,
It's the
doing the
timing
study
of it.
now.
It's how it's all timed,
It's
too.
just like with what we were just talking about with construction. Everything does come down to timing.
Exactly. I don't think VRE would be ready for this, though. They could do the bus lanes, they could do the bus service. It's not as expensive as the rail side.
Well, and that's the thing is while Haymarket, Route 15, is considered the end of the project, everything to date and according to their future forecasts, it's just minimal work out towards Haymarket. The big stop is Gainesville.
Right.
Just crazy.
It's the end of the world.
So, like I said, we're the official end. A lot of the services, a lot of the important stops at Gainesville.
Or the parking lot for the trains.
Actually, that's Gainesville, too.
So I encourage you to go, and like I said, in my engineer's report, if you are unable to go, on Tuesday, October 20th, they will live stream the video on transform66.org. So that's an alternative for you to see the presentation as well. And the last thing is the Caboose Enhancement Project. I kind of thought that maybe you guys didn't know what this project entails, so also in your handout, you have a plan view. What this is going to be doing is building a deck that's going to connect the caboose to the museum. And it's also going to add some landscaping that's not shown on this picture. And it is up here. You don't worry about the bottom part, but this kind of shows you the side view of how the deck will be elevated off the ground. So I just wanted to make sure you knew what was happening with this project. And we did receive a bid from Genesis. They're the only people that had even picked up a bid in the original advertisement, and I'm working on the request to award that I have to submit to VDOT, and after we get that, I'll bring it to town council for ratification.
Is this 80/20 money?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this unusual that we only get one bid? I cannot believe that there's
We got no bids in the original bid opening.
Right, but is that unusual?
Yes, that is unusual.
So how did we advertise this? I mean, is it like buried in a newspaper? I mean, because.
It is buried in the newspaper. We got, I know it was out there, we got inquiries from several construction websites, and I gave them the general information, and then you can give them for federal projects like a price range. And I gave them that, but Genesis are the only people that even came to pick up the.
You think the project's too small?
I think it was too small.
Yeah.
Oh, so you give them the specifications that you need, but you also tell them what the price range the federal government would approve?
Well, no, what it is that when people ask you what the price element can be, there are federal guidelines based off the size of the project, because you don't want to give them a specific amount. You know, you want to get as the best price possible. So you could say something like it's under this amount of dollars, or it is between $25,000 and $100,000, or that type of information.
What range did we give for this one?
I can't remember off the top of my head, and I don't want to say anything.
Okay.
I don't want to say it right out loud. I can get that information to you. Like I said, it's federal guidelines. So.
Okay, nobody respond. We reached out to Genesis. They at least picked up a bid package and came in with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. There's been a lot of lessons learned on this project as well. This is an 80/20 project, but it's an enhancement project. So it had all the same federal requirements as our $1.6 million street and scale. The bid package, the bid documents were like 116 pages.
Wow.
So for the size of the project, it's just.
They weren't interested.
It's really intimidating.
It was intimidated for someone to have to pick this up, go through all of these bid documents. It is a lot. And so there's definitely lessons learned. And is this, yes, you got enhancement money, but is that really, there's been a lot of staff time spent on this to meet these federal requirements. And
So a small mom-and-pop shop wouldn't know how to meet the federal requirements and would spend too much money meeting them to make it worth their while.
absolutely. Even I've had to been doing some coordination with Genesis for making sure that they have appropriate insurance requirements and everything like that, just to do this because it's got this federal funding, you have these requirements. So I think that if we're looking to do this type of work in the future, we really should examine if we want to use federal funding on it or not. You think it's great at first, and then in the end, it kind of...
It's very limiting.
It's very limiting, and a lot of staff time is spent, more than you would think, because you have to meet these federal requirements. So
So at the end of the day, what will we get?
I'm sorry?
At the end of the day, what will we get? I mean, it's designed and spec to where it's going to be, I mean, it looks like mostly decking, so.
It's mostly a deck, and the
Right.
grant was for about $29,000, if not a little less than that.
Right.
And so then we would pay 20% of that, and the feds would pay.
And aesthetically,
What is your question about?
just, is it going to be a pressure-treated deck, or is it, will have Trex, or is there, I mean, what do we?
It is, I believe it's a pressure-treated deck, a wood pressure-treated. Our structural engineer designed it.
Okay.
So I don't have, and I know there's the framing plan. I can't just, we have the plan set I can show you. I just tried to give you what the general conception of it was, but I do have the plans in terms of all the details if you would like to have it. And there will also be in terms of there's landscaping that's going in as part of the project as well. There's trees and some bushes in front of the caboose, and then trees outlining the backside of the deck.
Okay.
The maintenance on that is going to be high for the town if it's just pressure treated.
And that's what I'm saying. I would like to be able to look that up. I believe it is, but I cannot swear by it.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if it's too late to go back and see if there's a way of getting Trex or something
Yeah,
Just to save us maintenance money later.
That's a big power wash and sustaining it.
yeah,
Sure, drop
Okay.
that.
yeah, all right. Anything else for Holly?
I will say I also have an agenda item. Did you
Sure.
want to skip to that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Sure
that
do.
is on page 44.
All right.
And this has to do with the pedestrian improvement grant. Give you a little bit of background. This is the project it was a transportation earmark from Congressman Connolly. This has a 100% reimbursable rate, so in other words, we don't have to pay anything back. We had coordinated with the previous councils, and it was decided to extend the shared use path from what VDOT's doing down to the town hall properties. The point that we're at right now is we've submitted for right-of-way review, and then once VDOT approves it for right-of-way review and right-of-way acquisition, then we go into that phase. So that means we're about three-quarters complete. When they did the last estimate, as part of the right-of-way submission, they had to use new, the project estimate came in approximately $4,000 to $3,000 above the money available. And the reason for this is twofold. One is because VDOT recently updated the unit price lists that they do every 2 to 3 years to reflect inflation and the actual bids that they've been receiving. And then the other part is about $25,000 worth of drainage that would be originally what was thought could be constructed with this project will have to be constructed on that project, because the water goes from the bridge all the way down here to Washington Street, and then it crosses the street under Jefferson Street and then goes on out. And with the timing, we believe that project will probably, the pedestrian improvement project will probably be constructed first, so the water that's coming down the hill has to have somewhere to go. So in essence, it's taking about $25,000 that would normally be constructed here and putting it on this project. The good news is we have the same engineer, so there's no coordination issues in terms of how and where to put the drainage, so it'll fit with the ultimate site plan for this development. I do want to point out that technically some of these costs are still unknown. The right-of-way costs are unknown. It might be like the owners of the vacant parcel is willing to donate to having the shared use path, or it could be that people dig their heels in. And then the same deal with construction estimates. They are just an estimate at this time. You have to see how the bids come in. Identified some potential funding sources that for the overage. And I do want to point out this is not money that we have to obligate at this time. It would be in next year's budget that it has to be obligated. And if we do not agree to do this, chances are that VDOT will, if we cancel the project, the alternative is cancel the project. And then we will most likely have to pay back the reimbursements to date,
We don't want to do
which is actually more expensive than the overage. I will say I took it to the Public Facilities Committee and Finance Committee, and they both committees agreed that the project should move forward. So what I'm asking for is a direction from Town Council to update the locally administered project agreement with VDOT where we agree that we will pay for the overage, and then to have us budget for this in next year's budget.
Okay. Maybe you could have a recommendation wording for that, so that way.
I can, since it was just a recommendation, or I did it as
Like a directive.
a directive, so I didn't know if you wanted wording, or if you just said, okay, I direct you to.
We can do a directive on Thursday.
I will not be here on Thursday. I'll be out of town. But if you want me to word something up, I can write something up real quick for a directive. That's not a problem.
That'd be fine. I'd just like to point out that when the Finance Committee looked at this, it was a no-brainer that, in essence, it's an $18,000 offset that we're going to have to cover, but we're getting $500,000 of
So we're talking, what,
work
4%?
to pay, and we pay $18,000 of it, so it's,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to do anything but proceed to get the nice sidewalk all the way down. So it's too bad it's not under $500,000, but it's not a big deal.
Got it. Okay.
And I just didn't want to authorize the agreement without having the town council approval, so-
Right.
especially since it's money that we never thought we were spending. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
that was your last for your
That was
agenda
my
item?
thing, yeah.
Yes. Great.
Thank you.
Good deal. We're going to skip around here, and our next one, we're going to do our Main Street Coordinator, Denise. Wow. What do we, this is all smiles today, I tell you.
It is.
Yeah.
I believe my report starts on page 34. First off, I'd like to say I believe we had a very successful Haymarket Day. I think the estimate from the police department was between 12 and 18,000 in attendance. We've received nothing but positive feedback from the businesses, from participants in Haymarket Day, as well as residents. As of now, we are approximately 6,700 in the black. I'll have a better number once payroll is done this week.
That's awesome, considering that our highest sponsor was maybe, what,
Flag-
4,500?
Yes, Flagship Car Wash
Yeah.
sponsored 4,500 towards the event.
Yeah, that was great.
Let's see. All of those who volunteered came up to 58 volunteers. Out of those 58, 28 were unpaid. But the total manpower for Haymarket Day was 58 people to actually run the event.
That's amazing for that big of an event.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see.
It's never enough, Marshawn,
Yeah.
never enough.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor might have a question about.
Yes.
I just want to point out that the only concern that I had of that day was the Food Line parking lot.
Yes.
I was, for at least an hour, I was down there working with the Food Line manager and the person that
The owner of
owns
the-
The property managers?
property manager there, too.
Deborah, yeah.
In trying to resolve the issue of, once they opened up the parking lot per our request, it filled immediately, and then people are driving around back very fast, trying to find parking. They were parking where they shouldn't have. It was a big mess. So they felt that it was better if they hadn't opened it up, because there wasn't enough support from us to manage the parking. So next year, if we want them to open up the parking lot, we're going to have to negotiate that with them and somehow guarantee personnel there to actually help manage the parking, and this is more than just one person, to make sure that there is still parking left for the businesses.
Correct.
They're more than willing to give us 3/4 of the parking lot, but there still needs to be a way to have the businesses still have parking, and yet have a presence there of staff, whether it's officers or volunteers that can enforce the parking there. Now, all in all, I think parking was our Achilles heel this year.
Yep.
And I'm not sure how to solve it,
I think it's always
but
been-
we need to maybe brainstorm it and figure out, is there some place we can park them and bus them in? But then again, I don't know of any big areas.
That's something that
in the
we've been-
area we could do.
That's something that we've been pondering with. We've actually discussed possibly going to Battlefield High School, speaking to them. And, because a lot of the parking had to do with those who were participating in the parade. We had over 1,600 participants in our parade. So a lot of those parents and family members were trying to.
Absolutely.
So if we can have them all meet over at Battlefield High School, and then we shuttle them into town, I think that would alleviate.
Just something for us to think about.
Absolutely.
And lessons learned. That's the only thing that I would say that we really need to solve for next year. Everything else went very smoothly.
How much parking is at Haymarket Elementary, do you know, at the new elementary school? 'Cause
It's
that's
not a lot.
close.
It is close, but it's a
Small
very,
amount.
yeah, my son went there last
Yeah.
year.
What
It's
about-
small.
I learned pace.
Students aren't driving yet, so there's no parking there.
Yeah, it's strictly for the,
It's just teachers.
yeah.
I mean, Battlefield High School is a
Would
possibility.
accommodate.
That's 5 miles away. I'm
But you have
wondering
other
if,
places, though.
I'm wondering if the Boy Scout
You have other
place
places,
over
Steve.
there.
Camp Snyder?
Camp Snyder, I don't know if that has parking or grassy area or something.
It has a
Definitely
gravel
something we
lot.
can look at for,
Yeah, but it's something to think about.
Absolutely.
because you figure how many people we did park. You know,
Yes.
these were just usually the last ones that were coming in, the drop-offs, and then the handicaps too, that were
Yeah, and then we've
a
got
big factor.
the cost of the buses and that, we'll have to figure out if we can afford that.
Well, it's just for the one day.
Yeah, oh, yes.
But maybe we
it's
should go
not
back to looking at the
insignificant.
trolley, too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something you might want to consider. But I just want to say something else.
Too far.
When we were talking about the recap on the events committee, we also discussed the possibility of reversing the parade as an option. It's something we might examine. And also, the other properties at the New Pace West and Tyler Elementary might also pose a possibility for parking as well. So there's a lot of opportunities out there.
We've reversed it. In my 19 years here, we've done it both ways.
Right.
Each way has its challenge, but
You've got
We
11
won't let
months
that,
to figure it out.
Yeah.
Actually, she started yesterday.
Yeah, started yesterday. Okay, let's see. I have an update.
Wait, do it.
I was gonna say, one thing, May, to go from Battlefield without going over 66, I think would be the least, but if you went up here to, you have the new Pace West and new Tyler, plus where all the football teams park, there's a lot of parking up there, and even if maybe we looked into charging $2 a car so we could get some buses and kind of offset it, where we weren't making money, we're just kind of making it easier to get into town. Might be something we want to look at.
the only thing about that is they have the sports fields up there, and they,
Book up.
yeah, unless you get them not to schedule sporting events for that weekend. I don't know how you're going to do that with the baseball and the football and the, because those parking lots get pretty full,
Definitely a challenge.
sporting events, so.
Also, I will be scheduling a recap with, regarding Haymarket Day with some of the business owners as well as people who participated, and get them involved and get some feedback and how they felt the day went as well. And that will be next Wednesday, the 7th.
Yeah, I just want to say I thought you did an outstanding job.
Thank you. It was definitely a group effort. And then I have an update regarding National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I did hear back from Novant. They will have 7 representatives here on Thursday for our October 1 council meeting, where we'll have a proclamation read as well as the museum lighting ceremony. We're going to light the museum pink in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So for the entire month of October, it will be lit pink at night.
We're going to do that after the council meeting, or?
We were
Same
planning
day,
on
or-
breaking, so we would start the council meeting and then break to go over to the museum to do the lighting ceremony. Also, Navant will have a guest speaker here to speak regarding Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Excellent. Great. We started a new trend.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Yep.
And it definitely gets the community engaged because they want to know what's going on, like, why is it red?
People
and why
ask
is
me
it
all the time, why is that red? Why is that?
And we'll have our A-frame sign outside stating that it's for Breast Cancer Awareness
Just give
Month.
them Joe's cell phone number.
That's right.
Okay.
703-753-2600.
Yeah.
So if council has any other questions for me. Oh,
Yeah.
the call to volunteers.
All right.
Yes. As you know, the museum is run on all volunteers with the exception of myself, and we are down to our last 8-9 weeks left in the season. And I am in need in some assistance on Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 2. Currently, right now, what's on exhibit is our Civil War, the 150th anniversary of the end of the American Civil War, and that will continue through October 10th, and then the Haymarket Quilters will be there through November, and then we'll have our end of the year decorated in a seasonal motif in the year 1850. So it would just be basically just
greeters, we call them docents, that explain what's on exhibit, and I have all that information in the museum. In the month of October, it's pretty simple because the quilters, they do their own exhibit, and it's very self-explanatory because they'll be there to assist people.
Okay.
So I do have a sign-up sheet with me tonight, and the ones that are in yellow are the dates that I still need some kind of assistance there at the museum. And it's a wonderful way to learn the history of your town and actually meet people that come in for the Iceplex. They travel into town, they come inside the museum, so it's a great way to meet the people that come into your town as well.
We found also by opening the caboose, kind of attracted the smaller ones to go over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very nice. Okay. Any other questions for Denise? Holly? Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up to your question. It is pressure-treated wood. That's for the
Oh,
jacket.
okay. All right.
So I just wanted to get back to you on that.
Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Holly.
Yep.
Is there any chance of changing that, or is it too late?
I'd say it's too late. We already have a bid received. And
I'm sorry?
It would be my assumption that if we pay for the difference, I don't think there's a analysis. You pay for the difference between using Trex versus a pressure treated wood.
I don't know how that affects the 80/20.
I don't either. I mean, I can call VDOT and ask them if we can just switch it out and pay what's in excess of the bid, the change in the bid price. I'll have to call and ask.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Is that something you guys want to pursue?
Well, it would depend on the cost to get if we're able to do it and then get a quote on that, then we could take a look at that. But it's, yeah.
I think there's kind of a shaking of heads up here that, and yeah, it does make sense.
Is there any possibility of canceling it and starting over, or is that going to drive it out of the, well, okay, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly, or do a change order. That's the way you said it.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for Denise?
Thank you, Denise.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. Our next item, we're going to go up to our police report. Chief Noble. Welcome, sir.
Well, most of this actually predates my arrival, but I will say that there's 3 months of trending there. And probably the most significant conclusion, I think, that we can draw from that is how much police work in the town is what we call self-initiated. And really, you know, typically there's 2 ways that we're going to generate calls for service, that being which the officers initiate on their own, that which comes in off a 911 or non-emergency call. And clearly you can tell that in June at some point we had some number of personnel who were off, and the numbers outside of parking tickets reflect that. Universally they're down, which I think is a real indication that officers are out there doing exactly what you want them to do, proactively patrolling and developing calls for service on their own. So I think that that trending is pretty a pretty good indicator, again, that your police staff are doing what you would expect them to do.
You mentioned about earlier about calls, about how we report, that you were going to be looking into that. And can you maybe tell the council how that affects the big pictures and funding and so on and so forth?
Yeah, again, as I sort of delve into how the agency operates, you know, one of the things that struck me pretty significantly was the per officer funding we get from 599 funds from the state level. And certainly that is based on how you report your Group A and Group B crimes in Virginia. And just a little bit of exposure I've had so far, I think there is a little bit of underreporting that's occurring. And by the way, I don't think that's intentional at all. I just think it's the way that the processes within the agency are set up to report. And so, you know, you don't want to, you don't want to leave the impression all of a sudden you're suffering through a crime wave, but you do want to accurately report by UCR definitions or Uniform Crime Reporting definitions what's going on in town. A couple of auto larcenies recently, I think, are an example where when I looked at those reports, there's a UCR code for the larceny, but there's another crime that's occurred, and it's called auto tampering. And auto tampering carries another UCR code, and neither one of those reports captured the fact that auto tampering occurred. So there's some things like that where I think, again, we can be more accurate and work a little bit more on how we ended up reporting what we actually do. And the benefit, again, is that you get more accurate numbers to the state and maybe a more accurate reimbursement through 599 funding.
So, and also, how does it overlay, if you had a chance to look at, as far as Prince William County, that actually services a call within the town limits, who gets credit for that call?
That is a question I still need to answer. Okay. And I need to make sure that we're getting credit for the calls for service within the confines of the town of Haymarket that Prince William happens to handle. And it is relatively easy because they have divided their beats up geographically, and the borders of the town of Haymarket are also the borders for that particular beat for Prince William. It's Alpha 11, so I would assume that
Shouldn't be too
their
difficult.
CAD system is probably robust enough where they can pull numbers out of that. And again, there'll probably be room for a discussion on how that's reported and how that's given credit for at the state level.
Excellent.
Great. Vice Mayor.
Chief, I'd just like to point out that the two pieces of paper that are submitted to us each month in that probably could have some room for improvement if you have any ideas on educating us more effectively.
Well, two thoughts come to mind because I feel the same way. And the first is, if you're interested in trending, I'm interested in longer-term trending.
Excellent.
And so, police work is seasonal. It's variable. It depends on the time of year. And so there is a little bit of relevance in looking at the last 2 months. But I'm also intensely interested in what happened in August of 2014 and August of 2013. And so over the same periods of time, how are we trending? And I think you get a better picture that way and a little bit more relevant data. Of course, ultimately the problem is that there aren't a tremendous number of calls in Haymarket to begin with, which is a good thing. So something odd can dramatically skew your numbers. Again, you have a guy, I'm sure probably in June of this year, who wrote 39 parking tickets. He probably went out one day and saw some violations and wrote them, and then by August you have one parking violation. So dramatic decrease, but that's the vagrancies of being in a small area with just a few officers. But you again, over time, you moderate some of that. So I think maybe longer-term trending. I think, too, maybe not so much a report of every incident that occurred in the month, but maybe more detail on what we would consider either significant events or trending events. And I think you get more useful insight into what's occurring in town if maybe those are the sorts of guidelines for incident reporting. Now, look at this big, long list, and okay, so we had 4 beyond the lookouts. What does that mean to the town council? Well, 0. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. So maybe not so much of the overall counts, but something that
More the
trending
priority stuff.
and again, significant incidents. This month, we're working another assault at the Iceplex. And the more you hear people talk, the more you begin to realize, well, okay, you know what, that's an issue over there. They got an issue. And so, that's something that's trending and would be worthy of saying, hey, this is what we've seen over the last 2 years. And now they're talking about expanding the facility. So how does that translate into, A, more calls for service for us, but B, how can we jump into the design development process for the upcoming rink and say, hey, here's what your current rink doesn't do. It doesn't surveil the ice. It doesn't provide us with a lot of video evidence, for instance, if something occurs on the ice. Can we fix that before you get too deep into your design? So those are the kinds of things I think are probably more interesting and more relevant.
I would agree. And trending, I mean, to me, instead of having columns of numbers in it, a graph would make a lot more sense to me, especially if it's over a year or 2-year period. You instantly see some trending that way that you won't see with just numbers on a sheet.
And maybe the final thing too, and certainly our treasurer could weigh in on this, but there should be, I think, a little bit of discussion in terms of some of the finances in the police department, and particularly two very obvious indicators I saw in tonight's report are, number one, that clearly summons are down from whatever was used to make your projections for this current fiscal year, pretty dramatically, actually. And then number two, overtime for the first quarter of the year has already been expended almost 40%. And that's significant, too. That, it means that, okay, we have another 3 quarters worth of fiscal year to go through. Guess what? We really need to either dramatically cut down on overtime, or B, start looking at, are we going to do a BA and maybe allocate some more money over there? But I think those are the kinds of discussions that the council should be privy to also, particularly from the police perspective. And, overtime is a fickle beast, and you can't let it get away from you. But it is part of the business again, and if overtime is trending a particular way, then there ought to be an explanation about why. And it could be legitimate, or it could be that we just haven't done a very good job managing it. But I think that could tie into what the budget numbers are saying, probably pretty important for the council to hear also.
Sir, to follow up on that, on the second page, you see date and time. I would be interested not only of what happened, but what time of day it happened. I mean, or most of, to kind of see, when we need coverage, I guess, obviously all the time, but when would we need overlapping with more than one officer? I mean, when are most of these, because when you say crashes, I mean, is it morning, is it evening? I mean, some of this, I like what you're saying, like year-over-year data, but I think also the time of day you hit on, because, are we getting the most bang for our buck, if you will, on our police coverage based upon what's happening at what time of day?
And right now, the only variable is a single officer that works a swing shift, which is 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. And again, from my experience, that typically is your busier time of the day. And when people particularly start arriving home from the day's worth of work, calls for service will spike up a little bit. And then you get into those later hours, the late evening to early morning is when there is a lot of self-generated activity surrounding criminal conduct, most usually. But again, I will say, and these are some of the things that I discover, there is not a easy way to do crime analysis in Haymarket. And the RMS package, the records management system, is antiquated. It's on its in terms of a product that is supported by a vendor, it's on its last legs. The vendor has already mapped out a process by which their ability to support the product will end within several years. And so it's a little bit difficult to draw really good data out of it unless you're willing to do it manually. And that all of this is manual. It's drawn out by Donna, and so That's one of the challenges. You can do it, but it's going to be labor intensive, and it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, only because, again, the RMS package is not robust at all.
Is there something else out there, a better system?
Well, there's going to have to be, only because, again, the product is not going to be supported. And long story short, the company that developed this product went out of business, and as a going away present, they gave the agency a $200 rebate, which was sort of the send off. We're done with you. Here's your $200. See you later. Now there is interestingly though a third party that is willing to support the product, but it's at $1,000 a year, and it's not budgeted, and you have to wonder, what would we get instead of going out and looking for a new product. I will say that Millburg Police Department is leading an effort to sort of jointly with other small police departments find a common solution
Oh, that's.
that we can all invest in jointly, and so that the cost isn't so prohibitive. And I think that's a great
Because
mission.
what works for a larger department necessarily isn't going to work for.
Almost assuredly, because a small agency doesn't need the components that a lot of these programs developed for really large agencies provide. We simply don't need it. But that being said, again, the ability to draw data out from a computer screen is pretty important, and it starts being able to do some of what you're talking about automatically, in terms of looking at time of day and hotspot analysis and things like that, which we just can't do right now unless we do it manually.
A couple things. Speed compliance signs. I'm not sure with your turnover there. You're day 15, and just not sure how that's working. Or have we found a vendor, or have we've got those budgeted? And
Yeah, that is something that I'll have to follow up on, because I had heard about that.
Right.
And I heard they were coming.
Okay.
My assumption being, well, we found the vendor and they've been ordered,
okay.
and we're waiting for them to be delivered. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, we'll definitely check with that.
Identify the post right now.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to make a decision if we're going to go with Rolled Metal, or we're trying to get a decorative post to meet kind of the standards of the light post almost. And then other than that, it's finding the exact perfect ideal location. We've got those identified. We're just kind of finalizing the process. We were kind of going through the transitions. The workers to let's finalize that. And then we got to get VDOT approval.
Right. I think Holly was going to try to go ahead and apply for that, or at least.
She's gotten everything ready. We're
Yeah.
just figuring out the details on the post, because you can't mount them to an existing, you can't mount them to one of our light posts. It's not wind rated for that type of sign, or that type of mounting apparatus. So
Okay.
we have to actually set new posts. And so the matter is, do we want to go decorative, or do we just go with Rolled Metal? We'll have a recommendation moving forward.
Are these solar, or do they need power?
We actually are looking at getting the solar in. The equipment itself is just a matter of purchasing it, and really it just comes down to the fact that we have to do a new mounting. So whether or not we can find the decorative post that would be able to hold them.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have a?
Absolutely.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, Joe.
Thanks, Chief.
Sure.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
I enjoyed your presentation here and learning some new things. I'm looking forward to your assessment of the police department going forward. Now, we did one last year, and I'm figuring that's what you're doing anyway, because you're a very analytical person. So I'm kind of looking forward to your assessment of where we are, not just financially, but also staffing and things of that nature. One of the things I was thinking about, and I think we've all thought of it from time to time, is the relationship with Prince William County, and whether in fact, of course, we all pay taxes to the county as well, and the relationship between the town, not just from a working perspective, also from a financial perspective. So I'll be looking forward to talking a little bit about that with you, if that's okay, and finding out where the value is and making sure we're getting the right value for our services.
And I think the most common issue I have seen vis-a-vis small agencies and large agencies, when that small agency is within the borders of the larger agency, is you're judicious in when you ask for help, but when you ask for help, you should receive it. And I think if Haymarket Day is any indication, again, from a very fresh perspective, that Prince William in part lives up to that. And half of what they provided on Haymarket Day was on their dime. Now, we did contract for the second half of the day for some of their officers, but the first half of the day, those officers were on Prince William County's budget, and that's a good sign. You have to be a little bit encouraged by that. And certainly, I made an effort to visit Captain Ruby's at the Western Prince William Station and make sure that our lines of communication are open. I did the same last week with Chief Hudson down at his headquarters. So, we're working hard on the command level relationship so that if we find there are issues that we want to address directly with the police department, we can do that.
Okay, excellent. Thanks.
I understand you went to the EOC as well.
I did.
Yeah, got to see that. How did that compare to from
their
other
communications center is impressive. I was surprised by the relatively rustic nature of their emergency operations center. A little surprised, but
a good choice of words, rustic.
It was a little rustic.
Okay. Other questions for our chief? All right. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
So just to recap on just some of the consent items, I think we can move to our agenda. I would assume that we'll be able to put all the minutes, and of course, as amended by Councilman Woods.
I guess,
Sure.
yeah, we'll get to you, Brian, or Jen.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so then any typos or, yeah, okay.
All right.
Are we including the police chief search minutes under the agenda item into the minutes acceptance?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, it was, we're not exact, it just got left out.
That's fine.
May 21st.
Just want to make sure.
Should be in there with the correction that Councilman Woods put out.
Right.
I do have one question about the police chief hiring. Bradley Marshall, is he a citizen of the town?
Yes.
Oh, he is?
Yes.
Where does,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not sure
know
where
the
he,
address off the top.
yeah, but lives in town.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And he's also the assistant Commonwealth attorney? Is that the same
Yes,
gentleman?
Prince William. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Are we also going to put all department reports?
Yeah, that's what I
on
was
the
just
consent agenda?
going to go through, and so obviously we'd put the police, our engineering report, we haven't spoke to the planner yet, I've been holding off on you, our building officials, our Main Street, our treasurer's report, and,
The only comment on the treasurer's report, Mr. Mayor, we talk about the real estate tax bills will be going out the first part of October. I just want to make sure we put that in the newsletter. This way, there's no confusion because we moved the date up.
yes. I'll definitely have that noted, Brian's taking the note on that. And
We'll also be utilizing other ways to verify presence of that.
What's the email?
right.
from
All right, that brings us up to our planner's report. Sorry to skip around there, but
No, you're fine. I apologize. I try to multitask at these meetings, and I already have a hard time sitting still, so I'm sorry if it's disruptive. I'm trying to get things done while you're here, while I'm here. A couple of things I wanted to add to my report. Many of you may have seen the old bank building on the corner finished getting painted before Haymarket Day. They had a nice open house for the church there. Also, the barn of the old post office behind us. I don't know if you know, they repainted that, added the addition, basically overhauled the whole facade. Looks quite attractive, so that's been nice. Did talk to several folks about the Lane Garage. we call it the old Quonset hut garage. There's possible users for that facility. Hope we'll get some follow-up. I had 2 gentlemen from Baltimore come in, and I walked them across the Payne Lane property across the street. Also have Art Miller, who's the previous real estate agent that was marketing the property. He has some other folks that are trying to get into town and want to revisit that plan. The contract period had ended, and so that's why the project was taken off the market. And I've been discussing with Brian on coming up with some interim things we can do to try to get the property cleaned up. There's the stick action, which requires some resources and some time, but we'll continue to try to get that addressed sooner rather than later. You may have seen Winterham finished getting repainted. Before Haymarket Day, they cleared a lot of the landscaping, the old landscaping that was there. Councilwoman Edwards is probably going to have some questions for me on that one. But if you notice at night, they light the porch. So it's hopefully we'll get a user in soon, but I've not been told there's one to date. And also at dusk, if you look at the chimney, there's a bunch of bats coming out of the chimney, which is kind of cool.
From the firehouse to the Winterham.
What's that?
They go from the firehouse to the Winterham.
Exactly. Foster's, many of you may have seen the Foster's Grill sign. Right now, we're revisiting the sign ordinance. The consultant is presented to the commission. It's in work session on October 6th. Mike Cerny, who owns Foster's Grill, has several times pushed a standard that he would like to see. I worked with him to create that sign on a temporary basis. The recommended sign standards are still well below that sign standard that he wishes to pursue. So hard visualizing a lot of these standards and what they'll look like. So I'm using that as a test case for a possible sign standard. That building is 3 stories. It's close to the street. It can be seen from 15. So there's some unique circumstances and why we felt it was appropriate to go ahead and put.
That's a pretty big sign.
What's that?
That's a pretty big sign.
Actually, I really like it. I think it looks good.
And that's, to visualize that discussion. The only challenge to that would be is if someone wanted the same signs on the rest of the building, then it becomes quite clustered. So working with them on that, they understand that if the council or anybody else has an issue with it, they'll need to come down until the council makes a decision on the sign ordinance.
How long do they have?
What's that?
How long do they have
This
to
is
leave
through the
it?
duration of the sign ordinance. When the council makes a decision on the sign ordinance, then they'll take it down, if not sooner, if it's the council's direction.
Size, you're saying that is actually less than what the new standard would be?
No, the new sign is still quite smaller than that standard. That's what we call a wall sign.
Okay.
And they're technically on a corner, so they can have 2.
Right.
But it does seem quite large, also the architecture of the building. But it was meant to be a discussion item. It's gotten a lot of discussion. There were trees that were along the one facade that were blocking it from 15. Those were programmed to be removed already as part of the re-landscaping plan the owner was having in place. So maybe it's a question of a smaller sign, maybe 1, not 2. But the intention was to spur conversation about the project.
And it did.
It has, and hopefully that'll provide you guys some feedback once it comes along. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions in the report.
Okay. Questions from Rashawn? Start with Joe.
Do you have any questions?
No.
So we had a nice conversation this morning. Marshawn, I don't know if you want to share any of those about the Pardo project, and I had asked them about the viability of perhaps maybe moving that back a little bit, especially if you're going to be demolishing the rear end of the building, I believe. I think that permission was given or approval was given for that.
For the
Correct. So called the Blue House, it's a house that's on the street. The owner has gone through several iterations of trying to reuse that property. She had asked for a demolition permit. She was unfortunately out of the country for a while, so we weren't able to touch base when the ARB was considering her demolition permit. Generally, we've not always had success after demolition permits being issued. Doesn't necessarily obligate or compel someone to take it down, and most of those permits come down for a year. So given the fact that she was out of the country, and the concession by the ARB was to simply, let's do a partial demolition, and then when she's back in the country, we'll sit down and have a conversation. That building, its location is actually one of the few buildings left. That was the architecture back in the day that's built to the street. You'd post your horse to the front, get out, and you'd immediately walk into your house. So that's indicative of an architectural style and how buildings were built close to the street. I'm meeting with her on the 3rd with her contractor and also our building official who's from Salem, Massachusetts, to kind of do a last-ditch effort. Is there an opportunity to try to repurpose that building? If we can figure out that there's a cost-effective way, I would like to come back to you and say, so long as she stays within the existing footprint, would you be agreeable to waiving the site plan requirement? Right now, she has an entrance off Washington Street. That small a building would only have a small footprint for parking, and maybe just do a small disturbance in the back. Mr. Passanelli talked about maybe not that close to the street, maybe moving it somewhat farther back. Because it's a shallow lot, we don't want to go too far back and disturb the residents in the back, and also eliminate any parking availability behind the building. So that's what we'd like to do. Go back to her, let's have a candid conversation, have someone who has experience in repurposing these buildings. If we're successful, I'll come back to you. If not, we'll likely come back to the ARB and ask for the full demolition of the building and ask for a timeline for her to move forward. So I really felt like she had been pulled in several directions, and this was an opportunity with the support of council and other folks to try to see if we could really make a go of it. But we are meeting on the 3rd to talk about it. Mr. Passanelli, is a good accounting of
Yes, sir.
conversation? Okay.
Thank you.
Next question was regarding Blight Drive. 5 homes are approved. This is the second phase of the Villages at Haymarket. ARB approved the architectural plans. They're wanting to do this in phases. First, they want to go ahead and do curb, gutter, sidewalk, utility extensions along the west side of Blight Drive. We had an on-site pre-construction meeting with VDOT. One of the questions that come up about kids, the kids are so close across the street. Big tractors are an attractive nuisance. How do you keep them away? And so they've agreed to put up orange snow fencing along that length of Blight during construction so that kids will have a barrier between the two. Question to come up about streetscape along Washington Street, the brick, curb and gutter, lamps and sidewalks. That's such a short segment, and at that time, when the plan was being considered, we didn't have engineering plans for the length of Long Hairover, and rather than have them build a sidewalk to nowhere that we would have to maintain and possibly not match up with any future development of the Hairover, they went ahead and put the money in escrow, and I believe they've already paid that amount, it's $15,000. In the initial submission, they gave right-of-way. So we don't have to go and purchase right-of-way to accommodate the future.
Literally, it's like 20 feet or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
They are going to put a safe haven. Right now, kids walk along Blight to catch the bus. At the end of the corner, they're going to put in a 4-foot sidewalk, and at the corner, put a small concrete pad area so kids can get off the sidewalk but not be in the street when they wait for the bus. And there's already a light at the corner, which should help with lighting issues when the dawn is late. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
You said this is on the west side of Blight.
Yes,
What about the east side?
East side is Pace West. That would be addressed either through the county or the town through a CIP project, or at the time Mr. Landry develops the property. I think right now he wants to continue to use it as a park. At one point, he wanted to look at putting some parking, some perpendicular parking, 90-degree parking along there, but with the slope and other things, it was considered to be a larger project than he was willing to get into. So.
Yes, sir. I noticed today when I came home, they've got that fence up. Hazel was out there today. My question, when you turn the corner behind the existing homes, I saw it was the ribbon back there, the white. Is that the buffer? That first little part, is that indicative of how wide that buffer is going to be behind those first 3 or 4 homes? Because they stopped it at that first old shed back there.
That is the area for the stormwater
Okay.
management. That wasn't meant to be the buffer.
Okay. Because I didn't
most of
think
that
it
water-
looked wider than what, it's a 10-foot buffer, right?
Correct. So they're going to do that as a later phase with the landscaping, and actually I need to come back to you later on, and I can touch on that in a second. But to answer your question, all that sheet flow, all that water that comes off of the hill and hits all your neighbors along the back, I'm assuming, and I haven't seen it yet, but that white area is probably the area they're going to create a swale, collect that water, and do a better job of ponding it at the bottom rather than having it go the other direction into your neighbors' homes.
Right.
So that's probably, I'll go look at it tonight, but I'm thinking that's the boundary of where they're going to start creating like a bowl, like a depression, to create the...
Right, and is there any, this is probably a Brian question, but is there going to be any outreach to that community? Because that's going to be pretty disturbing for this folks.
I can answer for that. Mr. Gorman, I met him that day. He's a developer project. He mentioned he has contacted the HOA. Sounds like you may not have they've not gone down the...
Yeah, it hasn't percolated to the actual people who pay the HOA, which is not unusual.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We had, that day, had asked several times would he be proactive about getting in touch. We do have the text alert And we did ask them to call 48 hours ahead of time to let us know when they'd start, so we can at least put it on the website and do the email blasts or what have you. But to answer your question, we can follow up with the HOA more directly and make sure you get notice.
Right.
They're going to build the houses later on, so this isn't going to be all the clearing and grading. It's more of just doing the street front.
Right.
We did get sheets in last week, and we're going to try our best to co-process them through public hearing and get them to you by the end of the year. I think what's important about these is with a lot of these projects that you're considering, Chick-fil-A alone is probably going to be quite a steep tax revenue generator. So I have a feeling a lot of these projects are indirectly going to be paid back through the reinvestment that people are making into town.
So where does Chick-fil-A in the process?
Chick-fil-A is in the second submission or third submission of their site plan and their special use permit for a drive-through window. They've already gone through the ARB. So the next step is to go to a public hearing for the special use permit. They're also asking for a zoning text amendment. For some reason, we say you can only have a minimum of drive-through spaces. The mentality would be to get as many people off the road as you can. So those will require a public hearing to change the zoning ordinance. So all those are packaged together and coming through. So as soon as they get through that process, we've already submitted their construction plans, which Joe Barbo reviews. We gave them as an option to co-process that. So the idea would be is literally within days of a council decision, they could be pulling their permits and going out there and starting to move dirt. Same for sheets.
So administratively, is there anything that we're either bottlenecked or don't have enough staff to jump on this and to get this moving quickly?
What I mentioned previously is the double advertising.
Right.
If we can have a joint hearing, sorry, it's a loud term, a joint hearing between the commission and the council, I think will save a time. That's the biggest support we can ask your help with.
Okay.
I think the planning commission would like that.
Yeah.
And to kind of belabor it, I think the commission is usually, and this is something I think has just been the way we've done things in the past, we bring an item to the commission, they schedule a public hearing for the following month, then they take it to work session. It's been my practice in other jurisdictions as a staff, first time it shows up on the commission agenda, if it needs a hearing, we go ahead and schedule it for the hearing that night. So that way you're getting the staff and all the public input all at the same time. So I think we're going to talk to the commission next week about taking that approach with these two applications.
Okay.
They're clean, I'd like to say. I don't think there's going to be any issues we're necessarily going to need you to solve. It's just getting the public input and making sure we address all the public comment.
I feel like I'm seeing their things. I haven't seen all the documentation from Sheets and Chick-fil-A, but I feel like they have really done their due diligence and they have really responded to the questions and the things that have been brought to them. So I don't think there's going to be much.
Sheets as well, I would argue probably
Yeah,
Sheets
I
as
said
well.
Sheets and Chick-fil-A.
So there's no objection for the council to go ahead and push forward with this, right, as far as doing a joint, so I'd task.
I was going to ask, optimistically speaking, if we do this and we move this as rapidly as possible, do you think we can make sure that they're in fiscal year 17 revenue projections?
We can do our best and try.
Okay. Love to have it.
My kids would love to have it. My wallet would not like that. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's right. Just want to make sure you had a clear understanding to keep going as quickly as we can, too.
Correct. That's just going to take some logistics. Once it gets in front of you, close the hearing, bring the commission. You've done it before.
Right.
Just
For
need
the
some
joint.
logistics on how we make that work. So, other than that,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. You have an agenda item as well, or?
Did you already go through Brian's report, or?
Sorry. Yeah, no, we could do Brian's report. If there's any questions regarding it? Okay.
No, I'm good.
And the treasurer's report, as we're going through them? Any questions regarding that?
Is everyone familiar with the problem of the 10% meals tax late fee?
I think there's a, yep,
Thank you, though.
corrected and a minimum impact, is my understanding, so, yeah. Town managers report, Mr. Henshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have anything really to add per se to it. We are making progress on the town center project. I think the conceptual layout gets us going in the right direction. As Mr. Hetzel alluded to, we'll be working with ARB this coming month for some front elevation designs, and I'll be working with them, and hopefully they'll be forwarding a recommendation. One of the things we're trying to do is we want to show some progress, and I know this is on the council's mind. We want to show that we're making some progress. If anything, we're shooting to try to get that elevation once we get that locked down to be able to say this is where we're going and get the message out here on the front town center. And so that's one of the things we're shooting for. There was one item that was actually unfortunately left out of the agenda. If at all possible, I'd like to add it for the regular meeting on Thursday. This is the Berkeley Group proposal, and basically just give you a quick synopsis. Berkeley Group is our on-call planning representatives. They would like to get going on, they come up with a three-phased approach. This would be phase one, not to exceed $30,000, which was budgeted in this year's fiscal budget, to get started on the rewriting and reorganizing of the zoning ordinance to begin immediately. They have listed out, basically includes all the rewrite of the ordinance. It would not include any of the mapping or any charts that would go with it. That would actually come out phase two. The whole entire project alone would include would include the rewriting of the zoning ordinance, rewriting of the subdivision ordinance, and reorganizing and rewriting of the comprehensive plan. Although I don't know if the comprehensive plan needs to be completely rewritten, it might just be updated. Ultimately, I'd like to just bring this to you all for Thursday's meeting, if that's pleased the council.
Okay. Is there any objection for that? Okay.
Just to let you know, I did run this by finance, and both the finance committee has agreed to bring this forward as well.
All right. Awesome.
I just want to make a comment from a planning commission standpoint. I think this is really needed because a lot of this stuff's been piecemeal for a really long time.
Very long.
It's been my recollection. I think this gets everything to where we're all operating on the same sheet of music. So I'm all for this from a planning commission side.
Okay. Also, I forget how many months ago it's been. Probably, I want to guesstimate maybe 3 or 4. The council tasked or put a directive to the Planning Commission to look at the properties between St. Paul and Madison Street. And I just wanted to bring that up because I'm not sure if that just kind of where that is in that process, but I wanted to
What was the task
to look at the zoning.
This was to revisit the planned land use map.
Right.
The 5 lots that are south of Washington between St. Paul's Drive and Madison. The council initiated to consider changing the planned land use map from the comp plan from residential to commercial for all those lots.
Right. So we were waiting to hear back from the PC to.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I chime in?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had brought it to the commission. At the time, the comp plan overall had been shelved while the Dominion Power discussion concluded. The former chairman of the commission had recommended that they go ahead and marry them up, marry the land use map at the same time they're reviewing the plan. We had anticipated the Berkeley Group doing a more substantial overhaul. The update the commission was doing is more changing or amending blatant inconsistencies. And I mentioned this before about Hariver property. That was supposed to be our town center plan. Now it's down here. So on October 6th, the commission at their work session is going to be going over the edits to the existing plan, or the updates, I guess I would call them. And they're also going to consider the map amendment that the council has directed them to look at. I expect that once we get through the work session, we're going to go ahead and schedule a public hearing. October's too soon, probably November, where the public will have a chance to come in and comment on both the entirety of the plan, but also specifically the map change for those 5 lots. The commission had actually asked whether or not the council would want to look at other similar situations of changing residential to a commercial area, other parts of town. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the A.C. Watts property, those 5 houses?
Yes, the Pardo properties, the Watts properties.
I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the same.
Yeah.
So 3 of the 5 are currently on the long-term plan as
Residential.
residential. And the other two is.
Did I say that
commercial.
correctly, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Okay, all right. Oh, also, yes, here you go. Back-
The only other thing I wanted to bring up to you all, because I know that some council members have approached me about getting some training with regard to really kind of planning commission kind of items, but it's good knowledge for you all to have, because everything that comes up from planning commission does come to you all. The Berkeley group, on a totally separate thing from any of our contract with them, will be partnering with Sharon Pandak, who's a premier Virginia land use attorney. They're going to be having a planning commissioner training on November the 5th from 1 to 4 within the area. I know I've already been heard back from a couple of different members of the PC and the council who are interested in attending. This is a one-time shot. You just pay one flat fee, and then as many can go as we want. I just need to know if anyone would be interested. So you can just get with me after the meeting tonight.
And just to clarify, that's just a training, that it's not a substitution of the course or the,
Certified.
No,
Yes,
sir.
certified.
Think of it like almost like kind of like an appetizer. They actually
awareness.
recommend in that course that you go to the Certified Planning Commissioners course. We also do know that the Certified Planning Commissioners course will be offered in Leesburg right after the new year.
okay,
That's interesting.
all right.
Business Appreciation Month is wrapping up due to just the busyness of this month, but we are getting around to businesses, and it's been very rewarding. We're very excited, and we've been getting really good feedback as well. And so we're wrapping that up this month, and that's pretty much all I can comment to that. I'll be happy to answer any other questions with regard to my.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. I just want to mention the quiet zone.
Yes.
I did, how shall I say, entreaty Pete, but I didn't get into a lot of detail. So if you can get the information that we talked about, he's prepped, and I could go talk to him about some potential additional funding. I don't want to get into too much here about it, but there's a crossing at Thoroughfare Road that may need some additional work. I think we're all aware of that.
So what's the time frame that we're looking at on this?
Brian?
Well, as of right now, the town had applied for and received three different grants. One of which is safety improvements have been made at Route 15. Two more are going to be done within the next probably 6 to 8 weeks. That's at the Jefferson Street crossing and at the Route 55 crossing west.
Okay.
These safety improvements will basically be making safety upgrades, and also includes Thoroughfare. We applied for grant funds, but we weren't successful, mainly because they had just received an upgrade previously, and so the only thing that wasn't included in that upgrade was power out indicators, or POIs, as we refer to them. As we've been taught to refer to them. Let me put it that way. So basically, where we're at in the process is once these safety improvements have been completed, this would then allow the town to start proceeding forward with their application to declare a quiet zone. Rather than not, that's at the will of the council to declare it. That's still left in your all's hands. I think you would also want to have a little bit of citizen input with that regard, but everything would be up to code with regard to the rail safety standards to be able to declare. The only thing that would be left for the town to do would basically be install signage that there's a quiet zone.
Okay, so how much of a roadblock is Thoroughfare for us? I mean, is that...
It is a roadblock, because it has to be done because the limits of the quiet zone operate from 55 all the way to 29.
Right.
So when you look at the numbers of what the grant money that we got, which is close to $600,000, give or take a few dollars.
Okay.
We're talking about maybe a 2 or 3% need to do the power out indicator at Thoroughfare. So we've made $600,000 in improvements, and we need we're going to guess at $15,000 to $20,000 to do that. It's actually a no-brainer.
So what are the quiet hour times, or do we determine that, or is it something the railroad determines?
Initially, we talked about a 24/7.
Yay.
Right. And, you know, it would be within our right to do that, as long as we follow the regulation in the CFR.
Really?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, we
thought it
can
was
do
just
it.
going to be during nighttime hours. Now I'm really happy.
That would be that could be an option, but for the most part,
For who?
well, I'm just saying, you have those options. We know that the quiet zone that was declared in Manassas actually took in nighttime hours. It's not 24/7.
Manassas?
I think it is at the time.
It is. It is.
So happy.
Right.
Exciting things to come.
We're nearing the end of this.
So what do you think, best case, worst case scenario, when this could occur?
Well, what we're trying to do, we don't know if it's a possibility. We are trying to coordinate with the crews that are going to be mobilizing to do the safety improvements to possibly see if they can go ahead and install that at that time. We don't know what the process is. We don't know how long it takes.
Well,
if not, it could push more time if they got to do it as a separate work order and they have to mobilize
Right.
back out here.
If we do it now, of course, as we talked earlier about mobilization, we can save some money. The question becomes lead time on the materials. We don't know, and Brian's checking into it to find out if the contractor has those or has quick access to those materials.
right, or if
So
it's
in the
something
next 6 to 8 weeks, while they're out there doing the work, they can also do thoroughfare. And it's not a very complicated thing. It's basically called a power out indicator, because that's what it does. It communicates with the crew that the crossing protection may be malfunctioning, and so they would take action accordingly.
So once all these safety issues or safety measures are installed, then we put the application in.
Our application is already
It's already in.
Yeah, it's already in.
So then how long between when the,
But we'd have to go back to the railroad, of course, and FRA for final, blessing. And could take months, a couple of months, maybe less, maybe more. Depends.
okay.
Next summer.
I've waited 19 years. What's another month? Right?
Anything else there, Mr. Henshaw?
VML conference is coming up.
Yep.
I just want to mention that I am going to VML also.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You didn't have that on
Yeah, I
the
was
list.
just wondering.
Sorry,
saw
I did
that
not
missing.
know that.
I'm going
That's
to
one-
the mayor's conference on VML. Somebody needs to watch out after David. Suzanne insisted, what can I say?
David can't
Thank
be
you.
left to his own devices.
I will add that, and that is exciting. I didn't realize that.
Just the part with Mr. Aiken.
No, not, I'm just adding his name to the list necessarily. But I think it's pretty exciting that, and I know we all have busy schedules, but for a town, for Haymarket to send 5 representatives to VML, I think that's pretty special.
Well represented.
Remember, Facebook is instant. Instagram, Twitter.
That's right.
No, Facebook's
It'll be
down
out there
today. You
forever.
can do whatever you want. Facebook's down today.
Just today.
Whatever happened in Richmond stays in Richmond, is that what you're saying?
Yep, put the cell phone away.
Any other questions for Mr. Henshaw? Nope. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, is that
Sure.
okay for the manager's report also to go to consent?
Consent? I think we have a, yes.
And that was for mine as well. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Our agenda items, the biggest for the last, I don't know, do we want to take a
That's
5-minute
okay.
break here?
Yes, sir. I can get my stuff together. And
Yeah, if we could, just take a,
I think I passed out too. There was a alternative sketch plan in there that was all red in your packet. So I'm going to
Yes.
pass you out the color. Question on how to approach it once the. Okay. All set?
all right, great. We're going to call our meeting back to order. Our final item here is our Hare Master Plan discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I distributed a revised, not revised, but one chart which talks about the comparisons of the 2 sketch plans. It's color-coded. The one in your packet was all red. So we're seeing red, so this is the one that goes with it. What I would like to suggest, Mr. Mayor, tonight is simply use this as a tracking sheet and go through each of the themes that are outlined. Talk about general preference for vehicular environment, pedestrian environment, special activity, partnership potential. Basically, kind of get the feedback from the council right now. I had also included in the packet the a matrix of the commission and planning, commission and ARB discussion, and a little note area in your packet should you want to take notes. But what I would like to suggest we do is kind of go through each subtopic, through each of the features in that chart, see where the council wants to go. This is going to be put back into a packaged and sent to the consultant, who I was corrected saying we are a team. Keep talking about me, but we're a team. And together he's going to put more detailed sketch plans, bird's eye view sketch to help visualize, preliminary budgets, phasing strategy, funding sources, and the like. So without further ado, Mr. Mayor, if we can start hitting them.
Sure.
So I guess first off, the general consensus for the two groups and the staff recommendation was to look at A. Are we in general consensus that alternative A is the framework with which to go?
The A is the only one that has the two entrances, correct?
I'm sorry?
The two entrances.
Yes, sir. So we're going to get that in vehicular concept. Yes, that's the next theme down. So I want to kind of first, if we're all on the same page in terms of alternatives, and we can go down the list.
I think
as a framework, but we can talk about moving the details around.
Right.
So B and C are off.
The general consensus was A. I think there was some discussion. Do we incorporate some elements from B into that?
Right.
We're just getting on the general consensus, and we're supportive. This is the general direction to go.
Correct.
Okay. I'm good in terms of program.
In terms of programming.
All right.
Okay. I'll keep this one up here just in case we want to borrow some themes of some of the other ones. Okay. That being said, we jump into vehicular access. There was some recommendation on doing a consolidated entrance across from Coach Way. Was there a general recommendation or consensus by the council on which way to go in that direction?
I like the single entrance
Single one?
with
Okay.
the loop.
Brian's my scribe. He's taking notes for me. So
Go around. I am just curious.
generally
what others-
I'm sorry?
What do others feel? Single or the dual entrance?
Well, because Steve said single, I'll say dual. No, I'm only kidding. I think it could go either way, but I kind of like the single entrance with a loop.
And the idea is reduce
Because
the number of entrances.
I think it uses up less space, if I'm not
More
mistaken.
green space.
It does, as you can see.
And it would be
Generally,
more
what it does, entrances in and
Right.
out.
And it would be more centrally located, I would imagine.
That would line up right to the entrance to
Coach Way?
Coach.
Way.
Right across.
Correct, that's the idea, is to have them equidistant there. What's nice in terms of this one, consolidating one, we talked about interparcel access to maybe the church. This would lend itself as a single entrance. I'm simply talking about the design of a single entrance.
Right, okay.
That would help locate some of the
Single entrance lined up with Coach Way, I think, makes the most sense.
Okay.
Ms. Edwards? Thinks two, okay.
What's that? Your preferences or your recommendations too?
Yeah, and your thought on that?
I'm just thinking a lot of different things. If you're going to use it for, what we're using it for is public space, I just think it's better to have two. Plus, for emergency vehicles in and out, there's a pretty tight space in the one.
Well, wouldn't it be built to a standard, though, for
Well, sure,
fire
but
life safety?
What's up, Brian?
Just as a matter of thought, everything's going to be built to a VDOT standard, and I don't
Right.
think this current entrances actually meet VDOT standard. Plus, the other thing is, you could space them apart, but if you wanted to go two, but the current alignment might not meet VDOT standards as far as distances for driveways.
I just think aesthetically and to, I don't know, I just like the two.
It's feng shui.
Okay.
Feng shui.
Okay, all right.
It just provides
I
some
am on
symmetry.
the ARB.
So
Well, is it true, though, or is it just an assumption that a single entrance would eat up less land than the double?
generally, and it's reducing the number of points of access to the road.
Okay.
And you've got competing people. You ever see coming out of Haymarket Baptist,
Right.
Those two entrances create somewhat of a traffic flow
If
issue.
it's a dual entrance, I'd recommend making it one way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
Okay.
on that map, it's two-way.
Right.
dual entrance.
But a larger entrance would have to be designed to VDOT standard in terms of fire rescue access. If we're doing curb and gutter and sidewalks, there may be some barriers. If we do the interparcel access, may provide some alternative, but it does create some symmetry, which I understand what you're talking about. So if it's not across from Coachway, maybe it's more centralized to create the symmetry, but looking for a general direction, though, from where the council would like to go on.
But I mean, conceptually, you could have a wider entrance that still did a loop where it's not off-centered.
Do a central loop?
Well, I really don't think,
Or like a central entrance here and have it loop.
I don't really think, based on the planning commission, all the discussion we've had, neither one of those are really indicative of the more green space, the less shrubbery. I think at this stage of the game, they're both poor conceptual drawings.
I think, did you go over and walk the property?
I've walked it every day.
Well, I know, but I don't think that the drawings do justice
No, they don't.
as to the amount of property that's there and what you're going to get. I just think it looks like it's, I don't know. You see what I'm trying to say, Marshawn?
I think it's taking up more property. It could be more compressed with a dual entrance, perhaps?
You could go that direction. I think another advantage, too, is if you take one of these driveways away, now you have more room to play with the program elements. If you want to do your pavilion, if you want to do your
If you want to,
playground, you have more space to do that.
if you want to move the houses down to the roadway and sell them for money.
You could do that, too. There's another, you could also do, remember we talked about the hill in front, the hill on the top, and the hill in the back. A single entrance, you can maybe do more of, if you're going to do parking, do it more in the back, and just some on the side. So I think, again, looking for your general direction, we can design the details and the width, maybe make it a wider entrance to address fire rescue concerns. But what the consultant was looking for, our team was looking for, was direction on which way to go.
Can I just don't know how, if you do a single entrance with this plan, with Plan A, where are you going to loop it around? You see what I'm saying?
You could almost redo something like this, where you, if the two houses are here, you would come up through, do some sort of a loop, or you could do a loop around.
My thought process here is that I'm leaning more towards B with the loop, with the gazebo, and with only one house in that loop. And then, instead of having all that programming down front, just have a shelter.
Okay.
So it's really a combination of the two, and that gives you the minimalistic aspect of more property, more walking trails, that sort of stuff, and more open space.
The other thing to consider, too, if you're going to drive, part of it's the entrance and part of it's parking. If you're going more de minimis, the entrance doesn't become as important in terms of moving traffic in and out, just you need a formal entrance with which to go. So I think we could go with a single entrance with sensitivity to engineering for fire rescue access. And then once we decide on some of these other program elements, have them shuffle it around. And figure out the best way to do it.
I think if we're really going for preserving open space in this town, which we have precious little of, when you start going two entrances and all the parking lots, one of the biggest things the planning commission didn't like about any of them is the parking on that one is the main focus of the property. And all these parking, if we're a walking town, I'm not saying we don't need parking there, but it's just too much. If somebody wants to take their kids and throw a Frisbee or play football or whatever, it's just so cut up.
Did the PC also mention about the parking should maybe be over to the right or to the east? Didn't they
No,
have
not,
some
it was
conversation?
more of
It was
the,
more just the amount.
it was more the amount, the
Aesthetics,
minimus,
what it
making it
looks
minimum as possible. And I think there's some issue about doing more of your intense activities closer to the, or being sensitive to how close you are to the church.
Right.
So this first topic on vehicular environment, we talked about access entry, circulation, there's vehicle and bicycle parking. Sounds like the general consensus is to try to vet a single entrance. Is that generally where we're going? Although I know there's one objection.
But any people that change their minds.
We also have two absent.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
There's also, there's a concept of a loop drive versus kind of a single point. So I don't know if the council wanted to opine on, with a single entrance, doing some sort of natural circulation, unless we're trying to reduce the amount of asphalt that's needed on the property. And then with vehicle parking, it sounds like the general consensus of all the ones is try to make it as minimal as possible to preserve open space.
I think so.
So,
But if you're,
Go ahead.
if you're going to want to use this as a revenue stream for people, using the pavilion and everything, no? You have no intention of that?
Well, I think that's important. That's an important question. Understanding what the functionality is before you talk about the form is critical to this.
okay.
And that's why I've had a little bit of agita about all three of them, honestly, because it tends to bias you in a certain direction. We really need to figure out the functionality first. What are we going to be doing here? What are we looking to provide as a service for the citizens of the town? And then we should be thinking about the form of it.
Well, we could jump down to the special activity category and then come back and revisit these two if you'd like to go that direction.
I think that makes sense. So everybody's on the same page and we know exactly what we're thinking about
I'm just
providing.
saying, if you're going to use this as people can, rent out the pavilion or use the pavilion, you have to provide them with parking. You just can't,
Or
So, Mr. Franco, can we go that way? If you jump down to, on this color-coded sheet, if you jump down to special activity environment, and there's also the same subtitle in your matrix. There's a couple of elements. On the first plan was a 3,600 square foot pavilion. Fortunately, I can't tell you how many people that would hold off the top of your head, but you can see some sense of scale that's here.
What was the one when we were out in?
Yeah, Mr. Moore.
You mean Fakir?
Yes.
Yeah.
How big was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
We had Chris actually walk
20 by something, I can't remember now.
Yeah.
So, and this had several, on this chart has several program ideas. You could do it as an ice rink under the pavilion. You could do event lawns and then the pavilion amphitheater along the rest of it.
Mark, let me just jump in, just to make sure there is no confusion. In alternative A, what they're talking about is it's almost more of like an event pavilion, a multi-use pavilion, not necessarily like a picnic shelter, like we were talking about in
Is it
talk
covered?
here. It would be covered, but you could use it for various different things. It's large enough that you could put an ice rink in if you wanted to. You could even put up staging and have that. You could use it as a farmer's market on another weekend.
Harris Pavilion then.
Yeah, I think
They call it a multi-purpose facility.
I think like the pavilion that's used in the city of Manassas.
Harris Pavilion.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of the name, but just wanted to make sure that there is clarification on that. We're not talking about a picnic pavilion as much as.
No, not to say that there won't be
Yeah,
picnic
there could still
areas
be,
on
yeah.
the property. It's just
Exactly.
that's not the intent, yeah.
Yes.
So the key element with this plan is the pavilion. Let me outline them real quick and then we can pick them apart. Meeting space, gallery services admin, that's where these two buildings are used as multipurpose spaces. Arboretum and wedding pavilion, which was, where would that go?
Go up
Oh,
straight.
Arboretum in the back, on the back side of the hill. Sculpture garden in the middle. Amphitheater, which we talked about before, was kind of in the hillside above the pavilion. And then major community playground here, which is about 2,400 square feet. Interactive play structures, pavilion structure, handicapped accessible. So other elements of this plan was the trail. So that's your key element too, and that's thematic to all three, is the pedestrian trail with loops and with a loop and connections to both the Washington Street and the neighboring one. Yep, so that's generally the themes. The multi-purpose space with the houses, multi-purpose space with the pavilion, some open areas around the pavilion, a major playground, and the loop trails and pedestrian connections. So,
Which brings us to the hard question.
Well, I got
Sure, go
first.
ahead. Gotcha.
With the pavilion, I guess let's hit that then. There's general consensus to have a pavilion. It's a question of scale and size.
Yeah, I think that was probably the overall theme through everything that got tied through,
Yeah, I
right?
think we need a pavilion.
Right.
Need a pavilion.
But I'm happy with a
focal-
picnic pavilion and not an extensive multipurpose pavilion.
I think we need to be careful to where, I keep going back to green space. I mean, there's a big difference between making money off this to where it's tied up every weekend, where the average person can't say, hey, it's a beautiful day, let's go meet a couple families and have a picnic. Because if we go to where this is a money-making proposition, it may be green space, but, you know, again, it's a nice day, couple families, Joe's family, my family, Steve, we want to get together, and someone goes, no, wait a minute, I got a permit for this weekend, you can't be here.
Yeah.
I just,
You had to make a reservation.
I think a pavilion, like we had the company picnic, that's nice, if occasionally somebody wanted to do a,
He's contradicting himself,
No,
because we
I'm
had
not.
to reserve the pavilion and to
No.
go there.
Well,
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you make this a money-making venture, you got to have somebody monitor it, you're going to have to staff it, and we can't maintain the grounds we have now, let alone, you're going to have a professional lawn care service. I'm just saying, to me, less is more from my perspective.
In my opinion, though, once this is all redone here, where are you going to have town concerts, or where are you going to have events? If you have something under pavilion, then you're not limited by weather conditions or to have to cancel events or things like that. You have some place where you can go and be out of the weather.
But a town-sponsored event is something different than renting it to somebody.
Right.
Well, I think you're both agreeing, but kind of talking past each other a little bit here. I think you're both agreeing that a pavilion makes sense. It's who's going to use it is the question.
Right.
right, all right.
If that's what I'm hearing.
Right.
How is it?
If we're going to spend all this money to make this property better, you have to make it so it's usable for the town as well, as just individuals and leaving big green open space.
No, I'm all for using it as the town, where we have like a summer concert, something like that. What I'm totally against is where somebody from Dominion Valley can come tie this up, where the people whose taxpayer dollars paid
So
this.
you don't
I'm
want
totally-
like the wedding pavilion or things like that. Just make it like a playground, the playground and a pavilion.
But if it's a wedding pavilion, it's going to be tied up every
I'm just
weekend.
So
asking.
they're showing, the concept here, this is more of a wedding pavilion, this is more of a general scale. So to me, your question becomes a question of scale. We've got 1,900 people in the town, and we have churches and other groups that are in town. What's a reasonable accommodation? They don't all have to get under that structure. It seems like this was intended, shouldn't seem like this was intended to be more of scaled to our population. At 3,600 square feet, it's not that large. And you have these flanking lawns to where you could have those types of things. So I think at this scale, it's scaled to a town that's small. Programmatically, if you want to, you can develop a policy saying first preference goes to town residents, or we only rent these facilities 5 times a year. I mean, there's a series of things you can do.
Right.
If you want to rent it, that becomes a decision. What I'm really looking for your feedback on is this generally a scale you're comfortable with programmatically? You have some space on either side that you could flow into. This is a stage and amphitheater. Are we generally okay if someone wanted to have a concert out here, if you want to have a picnic under there? This seems to be the scale that's attuned to our town size. So are we general consensus on that, where to go? And its location, generally to the street, you're off the hill, you're more closer. So I think, I'm not dispelling the questions about maintenance, but I think this is really meant to be scaled, a smaller one. This one and this one, at 16,000 square feet, was meant to be a more regional, attracting types of facility versus just an open area pavilion. So
The size seems fine to me.
yeah.
The I think more of a picnic pavilion with a little amphitheater rather than a multi-use place which costs a lot more to implement makes more sense to me. And maybe it might slide over to the right a little bit if we have the single entrance.
Okay. And that would be one engineering thing. Also, too, I guess what it sounds like I can go to the consultant with and say, there's a concern, an issue about scale, and to the point where we're put in a position of having to look at other options to offset the cost of maintaining the site.
Yeah,
I think Barry's had a chance of doing that.
I don't mind renting it, but I don't want to have to rent it. I don't want
To make it exist.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be
That's
able to.
what I'm against, where we have to generate so much
No,
revenue to
I don't
pay
want
for
to
this
have to
thing.
generate
Okay.
anything.
It seems like this facility, from what it's described, is fairly simple. Yeah, again, you have your small amphitheater behind it. Location. So there's a question of size and scale. It seems appropriately scaled. Location, generally closer to Washington Street off the
Yep.
hill.
Yep.
And having some sort of amphitheater component to it as well. If there's a general consensus there, we can give that direction to Barry and have him further refine that
One
facility.
thing, as far as the single entrance, I mean, whatever, but when you come in, you do not want to put a road between the pavilion and the playground or the amphitheater. You want that to be one contiguous piece,
Yep.
so that if families are there and we're having a summer concert, the kids would not have to cross over a roadway from the playground to get back. Do you see what I'm saying?
So one way to look at that is if this is the same footprint as the pavilion, you put your pavilion here and put your playground here.
Right.
And it has a single entrance that gets you to the top and around. You can get
I
close
think
to the
the
pavilion.
reason people went away from that is because those houses are going to be right up there, and we were trying to be respective of having a huge playground in your, I mean, I'm
Would
just
it be
saying.
fair to say you want pedestrian-oriented design, which basically means the focus is not about the vehicular traffic, which means that will kind of eliminate that, and I think Barry will come back with a concept.
But you still have to have vehicular traffic.
You do, but it's not the focus. It's just like parking is not going to be the focus of this whole place. We want it to be a park. You want people to get in there, park their car, and then enjoy all the
absolutely.
amenities. That's what you want
So
them to do.
reasonable access based on the pedestrian-scaled facility around generally the pavilion and lawn concept. Was there any, so general support for this scale and concept, was there any discussion about the amphitheater, objections to the amphitheater? When we say amphitheater, it's more building, my impression is building into the hill that's there, some small little stage. in the
More of a
sense-
grassy amphitheater with a stage there would make sense.
And a lot of people talked about, this was just a lot of green for effect, but more open space. Now, in terms of the playground, if we can transition to that, general consensus about this, playground, you can either make it, sounds like one observation is make it close to the pavilion so people have eyes on. You can see little Johnny and little Susie at the same time you're using this facility. With a single entrance, you could pull that over. What I'm looking for is generally having the playground forward associated with the pavilion, or if we're going to look at a concept that opens the hill, does it make more sense to put some sort of playground facility?
Forward and near the pavilion, I think, makes sense
Okay.
for parents,
So
especially with young kids.
Right.
Other thoughts?
on this side, you'd be away from the houses.
Well, I mean, I think it really goes back, and we've talked about this, those two homes. If you had one home, you could put the playground back, and this is something we've talked about, incorporating that structure aesthetically. I personally don't think we need both those homes.
I agree.
So let's first agree on, generally supportive of a playground concept.
Yes.
Okay, we can tick that mark off. So the question, generally, it needs to be in somewhat of a reasonable proximity to the pavilion and amphitheater, and also to parking. You writing all this down? I'm summarizing for you, Brian.
So when we're talking about a playground, what are we talking about? What kind of playground?
This one describes it as 2,400 square feet, interactive play, range of ages, a small pavilion structure here, like a play structure, and handicapped accessible. It doesn't go into, is it rubberized matting? It's generally, is there a good location to have that? And if you go out here, this is generally the most level surface on the property down in that corner. This was described as a woodland playground, safe equipment and surfaces, gazebo, but it was more of a kind of an accessory more than kind of a key theme.
Any area for youth? I mean, because when you say playground, I think of smaller, younger children.
This is range of ages. So I think this was scaled to provide, you'd see the 5 to 12. Usually you see the 5 to 12. Generally, you design the concept, and that's really going to be back to budget. If we agree on it needs to be a multi-purpose, multi-age facility, you identify its general location, and then we come back in and budget how much that's going to be.
With the sections for the parkour people that do all that fancy jumping around.
Is that?
That parkour exercise they do. Never mind.
Like Tai Chi or something?
No,
Oh, they jump from building to...
Yeah, building to
Yeah,
building.
there's an urban mountaineering or something where
yeah.
people jump all over buildings and go all over the
No
place.
rock climbing wall or anything.
Is there anything for teens?
The trails.
The trails would be for teens. The teens would be here. Some sort of multi-purpose, like a rec room or something like that. One of the other structures where it's like a teen center or a small community center would allow them indoor. One thing that we talked about, which was somewhat missing, is a clearly open, defined recreation space. Here, like throwing the Frisbee kind of thing. So this does lend some opportunity to, if you open the hilltop, I was out there today, and the top of that hilltop's fairly open and wide. So do you allow teens where you can play on here, you can run? There's not a lot of places in any of these plans where you can just run, except in the back through these areas. So, but again, if we're agreeable on a playground that needs to appeal to multi-ages, then that's enough information for us to go programmatically being in the front, and we can go from there. I guess once we get into the discussion of opening up the hilltop or not, we can decide whether or not we want to move one of those programs up there or not.
Well, don't you think one of the key things is, I know the planning commission was get rid of both those homes.
What is it with the planning commission that wants to knock everything down in this town?
I don't think it's
just
knock
don't
everything
Let's
understand
do,
it.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Go ahead,
we're gonna
keep
get
it
to that.
together, Rich.
So we talked about the amphitheater. We've talked about the playground. I'm trying to be methodical. We generally support, I know we're going to go back to it. The Blue Trail, I think is generally supported, right? The loop trail, the pedestrian trail. Whether or not it's an individual station, I guess we can design that later on. So next one becomes programmatically about the houses. The staff recommendation I put in the report was to open up the hill and just generally designate this area as a service facility, which would either include, if you didn't repurpose the house, moving that house next to this one, or designing a new facility. And that would be a multi-purpose space, a small meeting space, bathrooms. One of the things I noticed tonight in this plan was once you put in fixed seating in here, this becomes problematic for a meeting space. Right now we have the churches and the HOA groups that come in here. This facility, this open forum wouldn't really lend itself to that. So this is some kind of, I know we have the building in the back, we also have upstairs, but this would lend us something down at that facility, a smaller meeting facility if a small HOA group or somebody else wanted to meet. But I think what we're looking for is, again, general consensus on whether or not to open the hilltop.
Yes.
Okay. And then generally identifying this as a services. Now, when I said in the report about services, this is kind of on the side. And in this program, you'd be able to get quickly back and forth. You can get quickly back here. You're next to parking if you needed people to come in. So absent the house being there, it just seemed a logical location on the property to be equidistant to the hill and all these other types of things.
On those structures,
Okay.
they're add-on, there's been add-on construction on those or not?
Yes, sir, in both instances.
Okay. So is the thinking maybe shrinking the size of one or both, or?
Correct. If the decision was, hey, we want a minimalistic facility that's only 88 bathrooms and a smallest meeting space, the food pantry, for instance, in the back, it has that after add-on. It's just kind of a weird square that you can't really use for anything. That you would pull the...
Why would you need a meeting space?
What's that?
Why would you need a meeting space?
You just said.
No, I just,
Well, a couple things. One, if we're going to eliminate a meeting space in this facility, you have a meeting space down there. A small group meeting space. We have a lot of HOA groups at multi-purpose space.
I'm sorry. Let's define meeting space.
To me, it's a multi-purpose, just an open room space that's available to smaller group functions, whether it be, we don't have any of that in town right now. The only place you can rent that is here, or the banquet facility on the top of Giuseppe's.
Firehouse.
No?
So, and this allows, this talked about art. One of the suggestions was doing, yeah, and this only could really lend itself to. We would open up the facility and do those types of things. So this talked about, a center or a gallery. If you wanted to show local artwork, you could do it in there. Services and meeting space. But the general, I think what we're looking for in this direction is, do you open the hilltop? And and the programmatic for whatever that facility is supposed to be, and we can either reuse the houses or do something else. Now, just as a sidebar of the two structures, this is the more architecturally significant to the town versus the police station. I cut you off, though, so.
No, I'm still thinking about the meeting space. I mean, I get the point about the different organizations and what have you. Not necessarily sure why we need to provide that and why we couldn't perhaps do that upstairs, especially if we have an elevator, and we took a look at that as well.
Also have the building in the back.
Or the building in the back. I mean, there are other options for that.
Yeah.
Firehouse.
We need bathrooms,
Yep.
and so
Can I finish?
it could,
Go ahead, Joe. You have the floor.
Play nicely.
No, I understand. That's why I asked earlier about functionality,
Well, it lends
Form
itself to how
follows
much parking
function.
do you need if you're going to have
Right.
larger groups there. I understand where you're going.
So just getting back to the concept of meeting space, we could do something upstairs or behind at the other structure, the police department existing. So I'm not sure we necessarily need to worry too much about that, in my opinion.
Or just,
So then that gets us down to a smaller footprint, perhaps.
yes, sir. Either as a new facility, repurposing the older materials, or readapting the building that's already out there. But what we're generally going with is if that's the general consensus of, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself.
No,
The general consensus is some sort of support facility, and we'll define generally what that may or may not be. At a minimum, some sort of public restroom facility that can be used, not all the time, but maybe during, if we're going to have Haymarket Day or a concert series, we can open up during that. But this seems to be the most logical location. And that leaves if you open the hilltop, what do you do programmatically on the hilltop? Is it the playground? Is it the field? Is it something else?
gazebo at the high point.
Or a gazebo, yeah, the gazebo that they have up here.
So how do we get, well, of course, we're missing two important people as well. How do we come up with a consensus? Go ahead, Ms. Edwards.
This is, in my opinion, this is what I get that everybody has wanted, a public use property for the town residents. And I hear from people that they want and need meeting space for groups and if you give a space like that, say for Brownies, Cub Scouts, youth programs, then they can also spill out onto the open space. So it's not just they're being confined to the inside, but there's also space outside that they can utilize too. So, if you just say, well, we'll just take a room upstairs and make it a meeting room, I don't know.
I had taken that concept from the comprehensive plan about the community space, teen space too, but that requires monitoring. If you're going to have a teen space, you have to have an adult there. There's also, and I'm weeding into the public-private partnership, but trying to do something with the parks, or what's the other group that came in one time?
Boys Club.
Boys Club, that
Right.
would they manage some sort of small, but again, the idea was that we could come back based on the budget and scale. This seems to be, and just generally the cost in here, some of these plans were going between 2.3 and pretty large numbers.
Yep.
The solution for the houses themselves was only a fraction, 200 of the 2 million, what we were looking at. So I think what this allows you to do is move forward. If the consensus is to open up the hill, we can come back and revisit the viability of either a new facility, a small facility, reusing the buildings, but we can still go ahead and prioritize and budget a lot of these programmatic things already. Start to figure out there's ways you can, if the decision is to remove or move that building, you auction, you harvest, you give it away. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do under that scenario. So, but I'm sorry, I'm talking
I think we
into
keep
it.
the food pantry and maybe take off the addition and redo it nicely.
That's where we go back to the illustrative. So there comes some concerns. How does that deal with symmetry? If you open the hilltop and you have this facility to the left, how do you strike some symmetry and not just look like a bunch of random buildings on the property? We brought that up. What's that?
Our consultant can make.
Yeah, and consultant can kind of come up with saying visually how does that, and that's kind of the next step after this is visually how does it look? Does it make sense? Is it inviting? You don't want to create a facility where no one wants to go to it. So it's a long way of saying the general commenting on thematically in this scenario, is there some discussion of what you want to do with the top of the hill?
Well, there's nothing to say you couldn't take the pavilion, get rid of the old police, put the pavilion at the highest point, put the playground out front, and balance the pavilion with one of those older homes. And take, like when we were over here, you take the stone out of that one home and you put it around. You harvest those materials.
Make them complement each other.
Make them complement. Nothing says that you have to have the pavilion right smack in the middle.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
That's another, I'm sorry.
I honestly think that maybe that was put there because there are homes surrounding it, so as the use would not disturb the landowners.
Well, it's two things. One, it's the topography.
Right.
This was
The
the front, this was the high, this was the back.
And you
This
can't
far
have the
forward.
amphitheater if you move it towards the back because that amphitheater is like going into the hill.
You just wouldn't have, it'd be a horizontal amphitheater. You
Right.
still have like an outdoor stage and like a formal area. It just wouldn't be elevated. That's, remember that big book of materials I gave you? One of the initial concepts for the town center plan had something that that played off of the architecture and actually had like an A-frame structure that if you just didn't enclose it, would lend itself to the concept that you're talking about. That would open up the front and maybe more open. You have a larger playground, more spaces to run, closer to the street. So you can do the smaller spaces. So that's certainly an option, too, of opening up the hilltop.
Plus, real quick, when you do Haymarket Days, you could have all that space to have areas. To me, the more we could put everything on the top of the hill, the better.
Yeah, and I guess the balance was if you go too far back, people can't see what's going on.
Right.
So that would be, moving up here is you would balance it. You don't go all the way back, but you're not all the way forward either, and you open up the front. So if that's the general direction the council wants to go, we can give Barry that direction and have him play around with the elements.
Try to get some other people's comments here.
I struggle with this because I don't have the history, and I'm somewhat ambivalent, and meaning that is, somewhat agnostic about it. But I can see relocating the two houses. As I said at the last meeting, it's like an empty slate, a tabula rasa. Are we kind of impeding our ability to fully and functionally design this to our needs by having those structures there? And I think it does and somewhat do that. It kind of biases us. The other thing is, rather than just raise them and burn them down, there may be some other solutions. Maybe it's been discussed before. I have no idea. But today, we were walking around and considering, what are some of the options here? Now, they are cute homes. I mean, maybe they're not in the right place. And I know we've looked at moving things around and what have you. So, I mean, it seems to me, and I know the mayor has spoken with others about possibly purchasing those properties and doesn't seem to be optimistic about that. But if we wanted to kind of embrace those structures, could we in fact move them to other locations on the property and maybe sell them? Now, I know that may be verboten here in town, but it's an option, it's an idea that's worthy of discussion.
Correct. That's where I circle back to. If we're the general consensus that we have a service facility, this seems to be a logical location it needs to go. Now, yes, it happens to be where the food pantry is, but that's what we're kind of looking for from you. Do we generally want some sort of small support facility, and what's the appropriate location? And then we have the ability to figure out then, well, what's viable with repurposing? Let's move them somewhere else. Once you take it off the property, you kind of lose the provenance of what was there. But yes, that's certainly within your gamut, within your range of offer it to someone and come in. You may not sell it. They may just say, well, I'll cover all the costs of moving it. But what we're really trying to do with this exercise is just a general concept with the area, and then come back and figure out what our options are. Do you move them together? Do you move them off-site? Do you repurpose or do something else with them? So that's the direction we're really.
So let's just go 1, 2, or none. I know that's kind of a hard question.
No,
but-
I have so much going around in my mind right now. And no, I think it's a matter of frustration. Like, when you put this out for this man to design these properties, you gave him parameters, correct?
Obviously, we didn't have the.
Well, what these were we did the public input session.
Right.
And with that, they looked at all things. They looked, what did the current planning say? What do the guidelines say? What does the ordinance say? But a lot of it was based on that community input. And that community input went both extremes.
Mm-hmm.
What they came back with was this kind of this one, I guess you call it extreme end, where it's really a regional towards a dominant recreation facility versus a smaller scale. And the idea was to present you with 3 kind of very unique or distinct options that are there based on all those factors.
So realistically, that one is cost prohibitive.
Well, and just it focuses less on the public open space. It does more of a auto-oriented revenue kind of multi-use facility that's catered to, a much larger facility.
So I guess my frustration is these people, this is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They create these designs. And I feel like every single one of us is micromanaging their design, and it's not our specialty. I mean, if we go back to them and say, okay, this is what we don't like about it, let them bring us another design.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where we
But-
are. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, they wanted kind of these bold thematic types of things, and that's why we're trying to break it up this way, is saying, are these killer elements viable? And then he's going to go back and say, okay, if we're going to do a single entrance, we're going to have a smaller scale, we want to move these elements around, then he's going to come back with these very detailed illustrative, some initial budgeting, and phasing as part of that, but he needed kind of the big picture before he got into the minutia. What did I say?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, only thing I would add is I think the big thing is we understand this is just not an easy decision. And so what I think Marchand's trying to get you all to understand is you don't have to make the decisions about the fate of the homes right today. What we're trying to say is, like, do we need a service facility? If we do, that might mean down the road that we're either going to rehabilitate the current structure, or maybe we'll build a whole new structure. Maybe we just build a structure that just has restrooms in it, or maybe we build a structure that has, but you don't have to make that ultimate decision about it. And what Barry's going to do is Barry's going to put some facility up there. It's not, it could look like the Higher Road, because I think everybody's intent is, regardless if that's a new structure or the existing structure, we should pay some kind of homage to the architecture that was there. And so you'll see those kind of trends into, like, the pavilion design, and you'll see those kind of trends. And that's what Barry can actually bring to the table. And if he brings it back and you're like, we don't like it, then you send Barry back to the drawing board. And we can do that. But I think the big thing Marchand's trying to get to is you don't have to make that ultimate decision tonight, because we still have some time to say, well, what's that going to look like? We're really just trying to figure out, does it make sense to have a service?
But I think it
facility
goes back
there?
to what Joe said in the very beginning. You have to decide what the function is of the property before we go back to them and say, tweak this, tweak this, tweak this. And if we can't come to a consensus on that, then, right?
Well, true. I think, we did come to a consensus that we wanted a public facility. I think the whole theme of having a central pavilion, some gathering place, so the situation with having the 2 homes where they're currently located is that they seem to then take away from the overall plan, I think, as Matt was trying to allude to, that, okay, so then do we look at maybe just possibly place setting one of the houses, maybe existing?
Why do you say they take away from the plan?
Well, because you would think that if you were going to have a big open area, as much open space as you can, that the highest point being where one of the homes is currently at, you would want to take advantage of that. You would want that to be a focal point, or, so.
What drives the overall decision on the Hanover houses is Plan A. I think Barry always thought that you're going to come up with some assimilation of all your elements. Remember when we did the town center plan? Town center plan has 3 different alternatives.
Yeah.
The idea was to say, when you go to engineering, you're going to pick that. So if the decision is that it doesn't make sense to use both houses, then this design is going to impede that. Our suggestion was just carving out a donut hole. Say this is generally where it should go if that's the theme we want to go. And that gives you the opportunity to go back and figure out.
But doesn't that inhibit your design? Because if you're saying something has to be in that location, so now you've limited to what you can do overall. You're reserving the space just for that structure.
No,
It could be
I'm
elsewhere.
saying
It could be located someplace else.
Where?
I guess I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself.
Okay.
The idea was, forget the houses for a second. Forget they're even there. Let's say it's a blank slate. But they're saying this is the highest point in Haymarket. So you want to, in that general consensus is try to highlight that. Maybe, maybe not. But it's the highest point. So you have that highest point. What other locations would be centralized on the property if you wanted to do some sort of restroom facility? You wouldn't want it too far up front. You wouldn't want it too close to the houses in the back, and then we have these 5 houses that are coming in soon. And it just seemed generally of all the locations on the property to have that sort of facility was in this general location. So that's what we're trying to say, hey, if the impediment is to figure out a final decision about the homes, this gives you enough emphasis to go forward, master plan it, start moving forward on it. You have general consensus and buy-in, and that gives you the time to come back later and say, is it the homes or is it something else? But I think what we're trying to glean from you is if, the wisdom of song we talked about, right. If we want to open up the hilltop, let's go ahead and give that general direction now, because that's going to drive programs. And we can say, what's an alternative look like with the pavilion on top? What's the alternative look like with the other one on top? If the idea is we want to keep this as open as possible, but want it to be more of a recreation facility, then we can give that guidance to the consultant and say, here are the key elements, go back, come up with a more refined plan. We may come back and you may say, no, not at all. And then we can figure out how to revisit it. So that's what we're looking for. I guess the next part of the decision, Mr. Mayor, is what is the consensus on the hilltop? Do we want to open it up? Or do we want to do something other than the former police station?
Right.
Open.
Personally, I'd like to see them both go, but to me, the more open space, the better. You get back to what teenagers want to do. Teenagers want open space. They want to be able to go have a pickup football game, go throw a frisbee, go kick a soccer ball. To me, we need to incorporate every demographic in our town, okay? If you had, to me, the whole thing has always been stunted by what are we going to do with those 2 homes? They're the albatross in the room. What are we going to do with them? If we keep them both, we severely limit what we can do. If you kept one, and the PC went through them, they are in disrepair, to say the least. We walked through them.
We went through them with the building guy, the ARB did though, and
structurally
they're sound.
We walked through them, and they would take a lot of money. Number one, they're not Sears homes to begin with. If you kept one and you kept the architecture, I just think one, for me, one max.
Well, then that's what we're trying to drive you to the.
And Joe,
Okay.
your feelings? Trying to see if we can come with something we can agree on.
I get back to the idea of trying to sell them. For me, that seems to make a lot of sense. I think we can honor the structures if there's a way that we could relocate them perhaps more towards the street. I don't know what that does to the design, but that is something outside the box that could be thought of, and perhaps selling them even. and not impeding what we want to do with the rest of the property. Just a thought.
In terms of, so you're, what you're saying is support of opening the top.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Well, that gives us some direction. Now, is there a preference to what that program is? Is it open? Is it the amphitheater? Is it the pavilion? What's the general consensus on element-wise on what to put on top of the hill?
Steve, your thoughts?
On the top there, gazebo on the high point, and a small bathroom facility, and maybe a meeting room.
I'm just talking about the top of the hill right now.
Yep, next to it.
Next to it, okay.
And Susan?
You know my opinion. And I don't want to tell the builder that we made him redesign his houses to match those houses when he starts putting them in and we rip out those houses, because I don't want to be in on that conversation.
Well, I can tell you, I did have a conversation with the builder, and my thought was that what if we relocated them into one of his lots to, but he was not interested in.
No, he's not.
And actually, his concerns were that, our thought was that for them to come down, actually, for the overall aesthetics. That was just from a developer's, in a single opinion.
When I had the conversation with him for the pre-conference, his big thing is just, is there a plan?
Yeah.
Properties as they are right now are particularly attractive, and he wanted to market that plan. So once the council comes up with a plan, let me know, and I'll use that as a marketing tool for what I want to do. So I guess we're saying by kind of coming up with this function of what we want to do with the hill, then we can come back and figure out what's there. So I need kind of a general consensus on where the consultant should go on the hilltop. You talked about the gazebo. There's some talk about the pavilion up there.
I see.
And the other?
Yeah, my thought would be a pavilion, and making that the focal point of the highest elevation for the town.
And then try to do something else with the amphitheater, or have that kind of as part of it if we do it on the hill? We do talk about the gazebo, but it would
I think
be...
the amphitheater needs to go with the pavilion, because
Okay.
if you do something with the amphitheater, you need the pavilion to support it.
Kind of synergy, yeah. Is that-
I want to ask Matt what he would think about the amphitheater and the pavilion on the top on the open space, given that you live in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
And
those
you
are-
actually back up to it?
Yeah, you-
Well, I mean, I don't see that being any different than all the people coming in there and all the cars for the food pantry every Saturday, or when they come. You're going to have...
Concerts there.
I understand that. There's concerts. It's been over at QBE. We're not having a concert there every weekend. And there's going to be a 10-foot buffer with evergreens, which is going to screen us some.
So it sounds like the direction would be not necessarily on top, but something that respects the hilltop. Because you're right, there's going to be, if you start playing bands out here, if we're going to do like a summer concert series, you're going to be able to look right into that, and these folks are going to be able to look right into it. So it's kind of nice to doing this ahead of time, because then the owners know what they're getting into when they buy it. But that is a concern we had before with the basketball courts up top. It was going to be a noise nuisance. So the ways you deal with that, you can move the pavilion not necessarily square on the hilltop, maybe you move it closer to the center and up, but we can talk to the consultant about it. But I do see your point. The closer to the top of the hill we get, and closer to the east, we start impacting the residents.
Yeah, that's why I prefer the gazebo and facility up there, and the pavilion down near the
Where
street.
it is, so people can walk. It's a walking town.
Yeah.
So, Mr.
Because
Mayor,
that's more
there-
green area in the back for walking.
Who hasn't? So is a consensus to try to look at an option that has the pavilion closer to the top of the hill, but not necessarily on top of the residents that are around it?
Not me.
I would say no, but then,
I kind of like it up there.
yes. Mr. Cottle?
It all goes back to those homes.
But forget about the
Well,
homes.
That's fine, but what do you want to do on the hilltop? You just, I know we all want to get right back into it. Right now, we're just thinking, what's the best place for the pavilion on the property?
The best place for a pavilion is centered closer to the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is this
There you
too
go.
close, or is this you're thinking farther back?
I think a little bit further back into the hill, where you could have the amphitheater on the back of the pavilion where you could sit.
Okay. And then what do you do? Do you just leave the hilltop open, or do the small gazebo? Is that?
either way, it doesn't really.
Maybe just put a place set, maybe put a place setter for that, that future.
Okay. And then with this, keeping close to the road, you do the playground. We talked about having a playground somewhere in close proximity.
And the most level part of that property is from the top back to our homes. If you were going to clear something where they could play football or something.
Be in the back.
For the police station, I think.
Right.
So, okay, that jumps back to, we've talked about the hilltop. I think we got direction, right? Where we're going to go. Hopefully Barry's listening. Develop the hill. We're going to put it in front. We've got the trails. So, again, the recommendation was just to carve a hole. If the hair-over discussion is going to be too troublesome, what about just cutting a donut hole in the plan that says, here's where we want to put some sort of small service facility. That gets them back where they're going, and then we can decide later on. So if that's the general consensus, then what do the basic elements need to be at a minimum bathroom facility? Is that the general consensus to go?
I think
or do
so.
we look at just opening, or is there another location to have some sort of support facility?
Minimum bathroom facility and maybe a 20-person meeting room if we can come to agreement on that at some time.
Joe?
I'm not sold on the meeting facility there, actually.
Or a bathroom space or anything?
I'm not really sure. If we're a walking town and people live not too far away, what do we need that for, other than guests?
I have to go to the bathroom when I'm at the concert. You're there for a couple hours.
The kids are at the playground, they have to go.
Yeah.
They got to go right now.
Matt?
You're going to have a restroom facility on a public, but you just have to.
Yeah, you can
Becomes a
do
question
that,
of,
but it's okay, go ahead. I'll finish later.
I know I'm pretty opinionated on this because I've been staring at this for 15 years. Right out my back window. I think small restroom is good. But I don't see why we need a meeting place up there. We have plenty of other places that people
Just because I want
can
to knock all
meet.
the buildings down.
Are we developing green space or more meeting spaces?
It's trying to service all the public, not just
Well, and that's
one
true.
group.
I'm not really sure
So-
we can't do that right here, though. Why can't we do that here?
Yeah.
You talk about public meeting space, so we're going to make adjustments to this facility here, right? We're still going to have council meetings. You mean that's still not enough room for meeting space? We're talking about seating for how many people? 40 people?
50, I think we're up to. Yeah.
So why do we need meeting space there?
And we
That was
forget
just
about
one-
that.
That was just what came out of the,
No, I'm just
that was
saying,
the public input. So-
I'm just
Right.
offering an option to that.
And also, we
So that,
I'm sorry. We also do have the local fire departments that have meeting spaces, so that's one area that has never been, if you need to rent space, you go up to Evergreen, they have a nice big hall, so.
But that's not what we're talking
No,
about.
that's true, yeah, this is
We're
just
talking about
making,
small meeting spaces. I mean, I run the Greeno Crossing meeting room, and we've always got people wanting to come in and use it,
I forgot that was there.
but we charge a bit of money for it. So, yes.
covers the cost, I think.
And the Boy Scouts can't afford it. And the Girl Scouts and the Weeblos and whatever else out there, that a public facility that is affordable would service them much more efficiently. But there's a big demand for a small meeting space out there that only has 10 people, 12, 15 people or so.
This chamber, we have how many meetings a month? We typically, I can't say typical, because we basically have 2 town council meetings a month. You typically have 1 planning commission meeting a month, 1 ARB meeting a month. That opens up a lot of time where this room sits empty.
There's a lot of HOA meetings during the week, most
Right.
weekends it's booked up.
Right.
But what it has is a small meeting space and the like. So I guess
Disorder in the crowd.
when I think about how would I use the space as a let's go around the corner and then I'll give my one pitch and then we'll keep going around. So I think the example, oh, I'm sorry, let's go back and then I'll give you two observations and we'll keep going.
Well, I mean, we've got this building back here that could be turned into a big public meeting space if we wanted. To me, are we developing a meeting space or are we developing a big open area that's the town? To me, that's the philosophical difference. Are we opening this up, max open, where we have the most green space, or are we not?
I think what the general consensus was balancing both.
Well, remember, the residents asked for it. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
Mr.
here
Thomas.
listening to the residents. The residents actually asked for meeting space. It was
Yes.
a big thing on their ticket when they had all those meetings.
And that's what
The
the
residents
one
came
comp
forward.
plan quote I put in there
Yeah.
for you. I think in making the recommendation to you, it does a couple of things. One, as a resident, if I have some family in town, I want to do a reception or something like that, what can I do with that facility? Okay, I can go up, I can have some picnicking in there, I can let my kids go down and play in the playground, and I have a small kind of a reception space with restroom facilities that I, as a resident, could modestly do that. To me, we always look at those properties, and then, so that to me is, I think we have a scaled facility that the locals could use and be a nice facility. And then, you have a nice open space, so you have plenty of places to ride, so to run around. So if I have a multi-generational group, there's something thematically on each part of this property that we can do. Hell, we got a front porch up there, you can sit out front and do it. I think what I'm trying to resolve as your planner with regards to the houses is giving you an economic or an opportunity to move forward on a plan, but come back and revisit it. We've always looked at those houses as a liability. We've never looked at them as a resource. We've never gone around and say, in a 300-mile radius, there are no Lewis homes or Sears homes. We have one. We were economical in saying it's not feasible to use it for everything that we wanted to do, but we're able to develop a plan that gives an opportunity for us to look at, figure out an adaptive way to reuse those, small or large, and then we advertise that. We say, look what we've been able to do. We've been able to think outside the box. We've been able to incorporate a resource. We've been able to salvage, if we move the building off the top, we're able to use the boards or whatever for something else, and we really set a tone and example. So that's where I think the recommendation comes. Functionality, it makes sense to have that facility there, but it gives the council the ability to serve all masses. You serve all those that want you to be judicious, but yet it serves with others where you come into town and these are types of things that you want to make. So I guess what I'm looking for, we've dealt with the hilltop. Do we want to just carve out a hole and say whether we don't even have to build it? I think if you carved a hole there and we came later on in the budget, it doesn't make sense. Then what do? You just don't build it. You take it down or you do whatever, and then it's an open space. You just open it back up. But in terms of master planning, it allows you to move forward. So that's my recommendation to you. But I need the direction on this area so we can move forward.
Okay, let's go around the table. One last final. Vice Mayor?
What are we asking?
Open space or not?
You know, what I'm asking your direction on is this. We've kind of gone through all the elements. We're coming back to, do we want a small service facility in that general location? Size, scale, whether it's the buildings or not, we can revisit
Yes.
as we move forward.
There we go. So let's just go right on with that.
I'm
Yes.
not sure it's the right location.
But for having a service facility, yes or no?
A small
Bathroom.
facility, sure.
Okay, so we got two for yes.
Small service.
Yes, three.
Yes.
Four, okay, there we got a consensus on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
What it is to be determined.
Yeah.
Not with
Now,
that.
your next
There
one.
will be a structure.
Do we have number two?
Nope, that's it. So
Okay.
let
All
me
right.
say this recap and get you out of here. We're talking about, we got to go back to the entrance. Now that we've gone through this element-wise, do we still want to revisit a single entrance, or do we want them to look at how does this lay out? If we lay these other areas around, do what makes sense?
Single.
What's it? Single? Joe?
Yeah, I'm still tied with the single.
Matt?
Why can't he do both?
Well, we could ask for both, because we do have two council that aren't sitting.
I'm just
Susan?
saying, I mean, you don't know, you might see
Mm-hmm.
a single that you love, or once he puts the single entrance in there, you might say, oh my gosh, I don't want that.
He could draw both. He drew three.
That's what I just
Right,
said,
exactly.
yeah, so
Any
draw
idea
both
the-
of
Well,
them
we
and
wanna-
see.
Cost of so many drawings? Just
But
out of
Yeah, the
curiosity.
next step is he's going to come back to you with concepts and illustratives
I'm just talking about him doing these drawings. I mean, any idea of the cost?
It's in his pro forma.
Yeah.
So remember when I did the PowerPoint, I kind of had the 8 or 12 tasks. He's like in task 9.
Yeah.
So the next one is it's not limitless, preferred master plan based upon input direction, sketch plan programs, bird's eye sketch, visualizing key concepts. Then it goes into the spreadsheet format of each major component, estimated budget, phasing strategy, potential funding sources of each program or related elements. So this would give enough direction. Now, the single entrance has a couple of values. Your de minimis on parking. Are we generally in agreement? Minimum amount of parking is necessary?
Minimum.
De minimis.
De minimis. So that may drive, and we'll talk to Barry about having that. How does that do with the single versus dual? Sounds like the general consensus, we want at least a minimum entrance across from Coachway.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Perhaps this, see how that goes around, that might fit better with the,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
right.
So you're saying do something like around here? Okay. Well, the idea is to be
I don't know,
proximate,
but-
to be accessible, and
Yeah.
go from there.
Okay.
Trails we've done, pavilion we've talked about. Well,
And
move it.
shared access, maybe with the Baptist church.
correct. Playground we've talked about. We want it to be multi-generational. And then general sort of service facility. Any other direction in terms of this is a very scaled
Are we doing a gazebo
landscape?
at the high point or open space at the high point?
I think general consensus, we started moving the pavilion, not this close, but farther back, but not on the top. And I think the general consensus I heard was just kind of leave it open for now, and then we can programmatically make what to do with it later. Because we're going to have a lot of structures. We talk about de minimis, we're having the pavilion and everything else. But again, it leaves you the opportunity to do it, so.
Okay.
Okay. Pedestrian, we've talked about, linkages. Do we want to make any comments on site furnishings? Do you want picnic tables? Do you want grills?
I mean, I think
I'd
that's
say
later.
let's later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep it minimalistic now.
Keep it open for.
Okay. This plan incorporates the
Wait a
streets.
minute, wait a minute. But wouldn't you want to know the location where they would be? A sense of where you might have a picnicking area, what have you? Or is that going to be tied just to the pavilion itself?
That's the direction we're looking for. Do you want
So-
individual kind of
right.
intimate spaces? Do you want some spaces and some wider recreation spaces? I think he just kind of had a general line here about site furnishings and signage.
I think the wider recreation spaces is preferable right now,
Okay.
rather than cluttering it up and having blockages.
Susan, thought?
I mean, I think a little of both. You want like an open area, but at the same time, you want people to be able to utilize,
Space.
you know, to have like a picnic area.
Right, just designated
Yeah, a
area.
couple tables,
designated.
yeah.
This with a lot of the landscaping, which was to make it kind of a showy plan, but we have some open spaces around. So we can have him incorporate some smaller areas, both smaller rec areas and then smaller picnic areas, based on what makes sense.
I mean, like on the sides of the pavilion, it appears that there's lawn area there.
What's that?
I said on the sides of the pavilion, it appears that there's lawn area there that you could, I don't know if anyone would want to use that for a picnic
Well,
or not, or put it, I don't know. It
to me, if we're
doesn't-
going to reduce the parking, we're going to
Right.
open up some of these areas.
Right,
If
that's
you remember the
true.
property right now the town sign's about right here.
Mhm,
You
yeah.
have all that open space in there, so you could just,
Yeah.
that's an informal kind of picnic area.
Okay.
Okay. Loop trails we talked about. What else do we need? Less parking. Do we want them to vet any sort of, there's another suggestion about light vending. We're not going to push it on the
No.
service structure.
No.
Yeah.
Rental fees, do they even want to incorporate any sort of public-private partnership with it? Sounds like no, we want to keep it.
I don't think so. I mean, if we rent it, we might do it on our own and just very basic and not as a money-making thing.
Do you want to, at this point, make any comment on priorities for phasing?
I think phasing makes some sense.
What's that?
If you're going to do a full concept, you might want to know how you're going to phase the work. not going to be
I think
able to
what
pay
he's
for the whole
asking
thing.
is what our priorities are.
On the phasing,
On the
how to do it? Oh, okay.
As far as what.
Well, I don't think we know that right now, then.
Well, we
We
might
need to
need
see.
to probably.
Some of the groups had provided some comments, so yes, once you get,
spent a lot of time.
yeah, once you get the full concept together, yes, you're going to say, well, this makes sense first. But it's right off the bat, hey, look with an eye toward doing parking first, or doing pavilion first, or
The
doing
front
playground
entrance.
first. What's that?
The front entrance, the
The front
sidewalks.
entrance, so you want to do the streetscape type of things.
I think front entrance infrastructure needs to come first, parking, driveway, or driving area, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's accessibility. Do we want to make it first be accessible?
That
Right.
has to, I think, has to be done first, and then after that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, I think after that would be like the walking trail,
Right.
the stuff in
ARB
back.
said, like, clean out the underbrush and take down the extra structures, like
Yeah.
the garage, stuff like that,
Well,
and
there's
then
all
put the
buildings.
walking trails in.
Yeah.
So the general eye toward trying to do accessibility, make it regardless of any hard structure, and just making it kind of a usable space maybe first.
First usable open area.
Correct.
Okay.
Can we all agree on what we would call this place? Like Hanover Park? Is it-
How about a little contest?
There you go.
Yeah,
You
there
could
you
do
go.
that.
That's a good idea, Joe. Get the public.
We have gotten a lot of
interested.
interest by scouting groups and stuff that want to do some sort of service type of thing, so. Okay. Thank you very much. Hopefully this wasn't too painful.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good. I think you guys will be really happy when we come back with
So
the
late.
Yeah. Okay.
product, so.
The angry part.
And again, this is a concept, if you want to, we're just trying to get the ball rolling, so.
And because of VML, of course, our next meeting is this Thursday, 7 o'clock. Yeah. Oh, okay, all right. All right.
Mr. Mayor, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right. Yes, sir.
Just as a clarification for the agenda, you did not talk about the Reagan Middle School.
Yeah, we're going to put that off to the side right now.
To the side, or do you want it on the agenda for
No, not on the
Thursday?
agenda for Thursday.
Okay, that, we'll roll that off, and we'll roll off the Hanover plan, because you did all the work tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, should be real quick. Yes, we are. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have new stuff for
Listen to
Thursday.
you.
We're getting a new packet.
Yeah, because we have the.
I just took what I heard, which was really.
Right.